Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today I'm here with the one and only Jacob Saunders.
Like a lot of the money from the universities come from funding, not tuitions, which is insane because of how much tuition is.
That's a good point.
What happens when that funding goes away? Well, they kind of cease to exist. So you have to play by these rules from whatever donors and corporations, or else you aren't U of T anymore. Like the prestige, you're U of T, but you're not like the U of T where people come to.
I have gotten to the point where I think that the promotion of sin is worse than sin itself.
It's like if someone says they're religious, I don't put them on any kind of pedestal, because like there were Catholic priests who said that they were religious and then they just like fondled the boys. So I don't care what you say, but show me how you live.
I don't think that we're meant to live for ourselves. I think we're meant to live for others. Because if everyone in the world lived only for themselves, you'd only have one person looking out for you. Whereas if everyone in the world lived for others and looked to take care of their family and their friends and their church and their community, now you have 10, 20, 30 people looking after just you.
I probably thought about suicide just about every day for at least 4 years. I just felt like for me and any of the goals I had, there's no hope of any of these things ever being accomplished. I remember seeing a couple people who as a group had, biked 500 kilometers in a day. And I was like, well, if I do it alone, like it's harder. So I'll bike over 500 kilometers in a day on my own.
Do you ever sense that you're running away from pain?
No, I'm running into it.
You're running into it.
Yeah, like I love that.
Okay. I've learned a lot at university, not from the university, just being there and observing things. So I would consider trans people a vulnerable minority. Why vulnerable? Because I can't imagine waking up, walking to the bathroom, looking in the mirror, seeing my beard and mustache and my sack and thinking, I do not understand what I'm seeing. I feel like a woman. That's actually gotta be a very scary reality. Let's get into the Trump thing.
You can kind of see how conspiracies come up, and usually conspiracies are born through secrecy. Looking at this guy with a gun aimed at the president and not take that shot. What are you waiting for? Well, inevitably they're waiting for him to actually take the first shot.
But I don't know if they would tell the 81-year-old dude who's losing his mind that they're gonna kill Trump.
I could see them telling him, but he probably wouldn't even understand what's going on. Conversation, having different conversations with different people helps your own understanding and helps there be some civil discourse, hopefully. And so I think what you do with your podcast and where you do it in a university where some people might be like a little afraid to say things, I think it's great in what you do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a ton. Thank you for doing this.
The mood is gone now.
Yeah.
This is a really romantic start. Thank
Intense. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the VoV podcast, Voices of Vic. Today I'm here with the one and only Jacob Saunders. I've got a bit of a title set up for you. I'm going to ask you which of these three, positions you identify most with. Super athlete, modern philosopher, and if you ever decided to retire from personal training, I would say potential future stand-up comedian.
I'm not smart enough nor have a good enough memory for the second one.
Okay.
And I've always identified more with the first one. But yeah, you can identify with whatever you want these days.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm well aware.
And I guess when I retire from personal training, I don't think I want to do it till I'm dead.
Okay.
There's other things to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to do.
Like what?
Man, like especially hobbies. There's not enough time. Like when people say that they're bored, I just don't really understand because there's so much to do. Like I would love to golf more.
Yeah.
Because you can't just golf like once a month. Like you're not going to see any kind of progress even doing anything once a month.
Yeah.
So I'd love to do that, but there's no way I can do that 2 times a week because then I have to give up like working or training myself and seeing those results or hanging out with Nikki.
Yeah.
And then it's like, there goes my relationship. So I can't do that. I'd love to do some jiu-jitsu. No time for that, like to get good at it. So yeah, there's just so much.
I agree. It's a problem I have because I don't know if I believe in the idea of jack of all trades, master of none, but this isn't my own idea. There's plenty of things. Another thing I'm going to talk about, I will pull examples from people that I've listened to online or through different sources. And I won't want to cite the source of the person because people already have a prejudice against that person.
Right.
So even with something like, we're going to get into religion here, even with something like the Bible, if you're trying to share an idea to an atheist who you know is an atheist, let's say, I know you're not in a relationship with an atheist, but let's say you were, for example, and you're trying to convince them of some idea from the Bible, it would be a bad idea to start the argument with, in the Bible it says.
Right.
You have to give them the logic through a route that they're going to be receptive to. So this is an idea that is from a person who people have all sorts of predispositional beliefs about, Tristan Tate, one of the Tate brothers, and he talks about these buckets of these life buckets. Okay, let's say if you have levels, if you're in a video game, levels to your personal character, fitness, money, relationships, different kinds of things. He says it's better to have 7s in all the buckets of life than it is to have any 10s and 0s. Now that would seem more of a jack of all trades like opinion or angle, but I feel like in life, if you really want to reach the top of any category, you have to just kind of be honed in on only that, because if someone else is honed in on only that, they're going to beat you.
Right. But a lot of people don't care about winning either.
Right.
Like a lot of people I think are fine with having 3s across the board. Right? Like if you only watch one news station, like you're a 2. Because you don't even know the other perspective and you just think that one person is correct.
Yeah.
And that's almost never the case, to only take one idea from somewhere.
Yeah.
It'd be like learning even in university, and you just hear professors say something, you take that as the gospel rather than like, all right, here's a position that they may have or that they're introducing, and what else is there?
Yeah.
And so you're just stuck now siloed, and you can't even be a 7 in that thing. It's like only putting your savings into Bitcoin and like no stocks, nothing else. And like, what happens to that thing if it goes down? Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of people are generally happy with 3s. Yeah. But at the same time, like having conversations with people, if you're only a master of one thing, it takes away a lot of opportunities as well, right? Because you get into a conversation about politics and you're like, I don't know, I don't have the time for it. I don't care. And then like all your friends are speaking about it. And so you're just like, I guess I'll go for a walk. Yeah. Like now you're just on the outside and you don't even have an opinion. Like that's going to be boring as well, I think.
I agree. I guess the main question is, for those who do want to win, do you want to win in the larger domain of life, or do you want to win in playing in the NHL, being the best NBA player? Like if you're a Connor McDavid, like a lot of people have respect. Let's use Sidney Crosby.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to be a Sidney Crosby, I would have to think that a lot of his time, not only the physical energy he spends practicing and playing the sport, but the mental energy he spends thinking of how to improve himself as a player, even at his ripe old age of 37, in his almost finished NHL career, he's become that great player by honing in so much, I guess, singular focus on hockey and how to be the best hockey player. Whereas some people who may be, once again, they're not going on the walk when the friends are talking about politics, but they might not reach the top of the NHL either.
Sure.
So what do you think about that?
I mean, there's a lot of athletes who can come out and speak politically and speak very well, intelligently. No. Like there was the famous Harrison Butker speech.
I haven't heard it.
So it's like NFL kicker, plays for the Kansas City Chiefs, and did a graduation speech for, I don't know if it was just a university in the States or for his actual alma mater, but it was something along the lines of how he lives, a Christian life, and how his wife took on the role of homemaker, and how he was really happy with that. She was happy with that. They have children. They live this great life. And he feels like a lot of university students in particular are just being told, you can be whatever you want and be this boss woman. And what it's leading to is like, lower birth rates because women want to work more. Not that that's wrong per se, but when people aren't having families, there can be a problem with that, especially down the line if we think of population. But so he went on about this and spoke very intelligently. And then there's just some of like the left-leaning athletes that were like, you have no place to speak about this. You're an athlete. Same with what they've said about LeBron before. Shut up and dribble. And you're like, so you're not even allowed to have that other bucket at a 7. Like you try and even speak out about something to what you know. And they're like, no, stick to your sport, guy.
Yeah.
So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't anyways.
That's a good point. Do you think that there's more pressure just from, like, let's say the professional athlete perspective coming from upsetting the fans or upsetting the league? Like the head of the NBA who's like, we're not going to take this stance. If you want to speak against BLM, you're not going to last in this league for very long.
Yeah, which is really bizarre because the people that are going to hockey games anyways, like I don't think you're going to sell a lot less tickets because someone spoke out against LGBTQIA+,
which happened with 30,000. Yeah.
Like people are still gonna go, and if you don't put the color of tape on your hockey stick, it's not like you're automatically an asshole. You just have a different belief than that person. So like, hey, let them have their belief even if you think they're wrong. But when you don't even allow a discourse, like what's to happen when someone does that to you now? So they're like, listen, like if they go to a strong like Muslim country and you're gay and you're like, think your opinion matters so much, you go over, profess your gayness, and then they kill you because homosexuality is like a deep sin to them. So now at home in America, you've said you can't speak about this at all and you need to be accepting of everyone. And then you go and try and travel the world and now you're dead. Yeah. So you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right. That's a good point. Something that is interesting is, okay, when you say something like having an opinion, let's say a stance against LGBT, as an athlete, for example, not even as an athlete. The example that's coming to mind right now is very recent. I won't say exactly who this happened with, but with the Trump assassination. Obviously, when you post something like that on your Instagram story as a 20-year-old with other 20-year-old friends, you're bound to at least get one angle. Someone's going to have heat. Someone's going to have beef with you, right? So, of course, reached somebody, and instantly there was an animosity there. I heard back from, not from the person directly, but from a different person who said, you posted that and now this person is gonna tell whoever, and they're gonna have negative opinions about you. I don't want them to have negative opinions about you. And I'm like, all just from the single reshare of potentially the most historical picture of the 2020 decade. And people have a problem. People go into like full attack mode when they see that, because the problem is that you don't even know why I posted the thing of Trump. You don't even know if I like Trump. I do. I like him. I think he's a cool guy. But you don't even know why I like Trump, because there are certain people who are Trump supporters who are probably Trump supporters because he's going to put up the wall. He's going to get the illegal aliens. And I'm saying that these supporters are probably not. Okay, that was a bad way to phrase it. Let me rephrase. There are people who like Trump because he stands against certain illegal immigration policies, and maybe the people who support him could be racist, for example. Okay, maybe. There are some people, I'm sure, who are racist who like Trump because he stands against certain things. But then there are also some people who like Trump because he's, in my opinion, the defender of freedom in the West. There's a completely different angle to come at it for liking Trump. So I don't know exactly what this person has an association with Trump that then, without thinking about it, has assumed that's why I like him. The reason I like him is the same reason that they dislike them, which is not true.
Right. Which
happens with so many other things.
Right. But you can also like build a wall and try and protect your country and not be racist.
Absolutely.
And what the Biden administration did after they got in is they continued to build the wall.
Yeah.
They just didn't really talk about it. So Trump was very vocal about it because he felt like it needed to be done. And when you see some statistics coming out on crime and what race they are, you can't really argue with statistics unless you're crazy and you're like, yeah, 1 + 1 might not be 2, which somehow exists also in the world now. But Biden's just less vocal, does the same thing, but no one really even realizes that. So it's kind of strange.
What about the source of statistics? Maybe not 1 + 1 = 2, but I don't believe that the inputs for that equation was 1 and 1. You know what I mean?
Can you give an example?
Like, whoever ran the statistics was racist and did it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to get that on both sides, though, too, because
Yeah.
there's times when you look into like a crime report in New York and there's like four people that committed some assault, and it says that they're white men, and you look at the images of them and they're like 4 Hispanic dudes or like 2 Hispanic and 2 black. And you're like, so did they mess that up, or is that done on purpose to be like, look at how much white crime there is?
Yeah.
It's hard to just see something and believe it anymore. Whether it's like someone trying to doctor some evidence or election results or stuff with AI now, CGI, like when you hear someone's voice, you don't even know if it's them. You see a video, you can't quite be sure anymore. So there's a lot of doubt. And even like apps, like if you got the Bible app, who's to say that the wording in that isn't changed from somewhere, and now what you're trying to read and learn is really different from the original word. And then you get some people that say, well, it's all translated over the years anyways, so you're not getting the original word. It has to be in like Aramaic or Greek, whatever. But also there have been very accurate translations, because someone who's speaking in Aramaic can see a translation to English and be like, yes, we understand the same thing, use that. But when it's changed and no one's really the wiser, well, now we don't even know what's really being said. What's documented? Is that real? Was that the original?
Yeah.
Is it translated correctly? Does it favor someone else now?
Yeah. That's interesting. Because that's a very sensitive thing. Because I just recently started reading the Bible. Yeah. And I read it like 20 minutes. I got 5 chapters into Genesis.
Okay, good.
So, but before that, there was the whole preface of, I didn't even skip that part. There's a whole preface of like, here's how we got to this new translated version, where you have, obviously now it's in English, original text was not in English. So maybe I don't know if you know more about this than me. Obviously I did read it, but maybe just to more think about the process of getting it from Aramaic to English, even though once again you said the guy who speaks Aramaic and English can tell this is the same thing.
Right.
Who's he?
Yeah.
Who's he? What if he's, he has an opinion different than a different guy who speaks both languages?
Maybe. And then you got to take a few as well, right? You get like a panel together.
Yeah.
And you do like 5 of each.
Yeah.
And then, like one might be a little left leaning, and so you kind of take out his stuff, and one might be a little bit more right. You take out his stuff and you go with the mean. Yeah. Maybe that's what you got to do. Maybe. But that's what you almost have to do with all things if you want to have a good, accurate representation of that anyways. Absolutely. Like there's just debates in anything that's subjective of like, who's the greatest hockey player of all time. Yeah. And then someone would just use the points argument. And they're like, well, Wayne Gretzky because he's scored the most points, or LeBron James has the most points. Like, well, like, do you compare to a different style of game from decades ago? What about positional? Like, just because he's 6'9" and he's not like 6'11" with a longer wingspan, he couldn't even play that position. Does that mean that like Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal can't even be in the conversation? Yeah. Like that's crazy. Right. But that's what we do, is we try and just simplify things to have a easy understanding.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that the world is more black and white or gray?
Like everything is gray.
Do you okay, maybe I should ask this then. Do you think that we should see the world as more black and white or gray?
In race?
Not in race, no. The thing is that what I'm trying to ask is that because I agree, the world is obviously gray, but at some point, how do you even make any decisions or have opinions if you don't think that this is darker gray than this? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Eventually, it's going to have to be like, all right, even though this is gray, I got to make a move on it.
Yeah. It may depend on the consequences of that topic. Right. Like if it's life or death, maybe if you don't agree, like say the really strong Muslim culture where they're going to kill a gay person, like, yeah, maybe that's generally wrong to kill someone for their belief, but maybe we shouldn't promote it as such, especially in our culture here. Yeah. It's not even like an acceptance anymore. Like everything's legal, everything's fair, whatever, everyone wants equality of not just opportunity but outcome now.
I know, that's a mess.
Yeah. And So what are we really trying to balance? Like, are we trying to set strict guidelines and rules? And then that might be okay, but that will probably bring about a whole pendulum swing towards chaos even stronger, as it always does. Or do we try and find, like, what are the consequences when it comes to death? Should we be a little bit more lenient? Should we judge someone based on their actions and say, like, hey, we don't agree with it, that's wrong? If that's what you want to do, okay. But also, we shouldn't be pushed into celebrating what they want either. Like, have you seen now there's like 240 something days in the year to celebrate LGBTQIA?
I saw it.
Like, so there's full months.
Saw that from Charlie Kirk.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So there's full months, and now there's like certain weeks, days, and it totals up like 2/3 of the year. And so now the average is actually those people.
Yeah.
And now if you don't celebrate it, you're suddenly on the outside, where it used to be like illegal or frowned upon. And now it's like, listen, you don't celebrate this, like, you bigot. How dare you not speak about this on your social media? Like, the transgressions against our trans community, and you're just staying quiet.
Yeah. Literally.
So now I have to support you, or else I'm an asshole.
Right.
That's crazy.
It's unreal.
Yeah. Because what do you do for me? Like, how many white male days are there per year?
Straight as well.
Yes. Yeah. Like, that would be, you might as well get killed.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they're coming for us.
I don't know who said this, but I heard, okay, I don't want to mess up the phrasing of this. To know who your ruler is, see who you can't speak against.
Yeah.
To know who your ruler is, see who you can't speak against. So if you're in Russia, you can't speak against Putin.
Right.
You speak against Putin, you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're in, I guess, China, I don't even know, President Xi, I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're in China, you speak against President Xi, you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
Here, you can speak against Christianity. You can speak against, I guess, masculinity and tradition. You can speak against all these things. You speak against LGBT. People are coming after you.
That's fine. I mean, I am self-employed, so I can't get fired.
I want to talk about that too, but I just realized I have my tag still on my shirt.
Rip.
So I'm going to cut that off. We've been in this amazing conversation. Unfortunately, I had a piece of plastic
Something tickling you.
dangling from my armpit. Awesome.
There we go. Now, is that a new shirt, or has that been happening for...
This is new.
Okay, so you haven't had that for like 2 months and just noticed?
No.
That would be incredible.
I got this. This is the first time I'm ever wearing it. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to keep that in, right?
Of course.
Okay, good. Well, let's use that pause. I brought some gifts because I had to study you to make sure I was coming to a safe place.
Oh, awesome.
So I know you definitely like, I don't know about this flavor, but I know you like
Absolutely.
Bublés.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you very
Put
much.
those bad boys out there.
I appreciate it.
Now, I know you've got some Mexican heritage.
Yep.
So I brought Jarritos?
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 Yeah.
So we got one of those that we could crack open and share as well.
Thank you.
And then these are all the rage. I heard about these from a client's child. We got some peace tea.
Yep.
Maybe need a little bit more peace in the world. So there's snowberry, which I believe has cocaine in it. And we've got tea and lemonade classic.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we could crack open one of those as well.
Absolutely.
And if you're looking to get a little more hopped up, I've got a red edition watermelon Red Bull, and then their classic that just also tastes great.
You know, I've never tried an energy drink in my entire life.
Why not?
Wow. I think it would be too effective. I think it would be too good that I'm going to rely on it.
Have you ever had a coffee?
Yep.
Do you drink coffee regularly?
Not really. I feel like it doesn't work for me. I haven't really noticed the effects of coffee.
So like a large coffee has roughly the same or even more caffeine than this Red Bull.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What more does Red Bull have?
Just pretty much B vitamins.
Oh.
And maybe some, depending on which one, taurine as well, which would give you a little bit more alertness and focus.
It's awesome. You want to crack one open now?
Sure. Should we get some glasses? So yeah, that way we're
Maybe
not
wine
mouthing the
glasses?
same cup. Yeah, let's get some fancy wine glasses, and we'll open whatever you want. I just wanted to make sure we had options. Oh, and also I am looking for some sponsors for my endurance endeavors. So Red Bull, this is a little impromptu working in advertising for you. So maybe you can hit me back, and we'll call it even. What are you feeling right now?
Let's just do the original Red Bull. Let's
Original?
Yeah.
All right.
I feel like having the watermelon version for my first ever try wouldn't really pan out.
Yeah, it might be weird. It seems like an acquired taste, just like scotch or whiskey or something.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let me know what you think.
Cheers.
Cheers, brother. It's not beer. It's Red Bull.
I tasted that's good. What does this taste like? It tastes like something. Cream soda almost. Would you say that?
I haven't had that in a long time, but it doesn't ring a bell from my horrible childhood.
That's good.
Yeah, not too shabby. And then they've got a ton of these flavors to really spice things up. Yeah, it's great.
Awesome. I appreciate it once again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we're gonna be zooming now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Baby.
I'm prepared. You know what I'm prepared for today? I'm prepared for a cancellation attempt. But the thing is that I feel like you might say more cancelable things than me. So I'm gonna hide behind your shield.
Okay.
And stay safe.
Yeah, I'll hold that up.
Okay.
Yeah, with
Sounds
honor.
Hey?
With honor. Yeah.
With honor, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the Trump assassination, right?
Yeah.
Or that was in our little pretext conversation.
Right. Off
So,
camera.
what do you think about that?
It was the most expected thing ever,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
because there are, I guess, what would you say? I don't know if anyone believes in the government caring about you at all. Okay. Crazy, right?
You don't think anyone believes that?
Crazy, right? No. I don't think. Sorry. I don't think everyone believes that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Which is clear, and I think it's getting higher and higher of people who don't necessarily believe that.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, for me, the wake up period for me was COVID. COVID was an absolute mess, and it revealed how. It just revealed that the government are human beings no smarter than everyone else. You know what I mean? Every system that's run is run by people who are no smarter than you and me and people we know.
Now, don't you think a lot of people felt like that showed them the government cared about them because they got free money?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because you're like creating this like pre-socialist
money.
environment
Yeah.
where it's like, yeah, no strings attached here. We'll take care of you. We'll make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Except maybe repay parts of it one day, but we won't tell you till later.
Exactly.
So here, like, take this for your business, take this for your home, whatever, no strings attached. That's amazing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They don't have to work.
It's crazy.
It's the best.
And there's something, that's the thing, is that this is tying into also the whole immigration crisis that's happening right now. But
There's a crisis.
oh yeah, no, a little bit, just tiny, just a little bit. If you've been to Silver City Cineplex in Brampton, half the movies they're screening are in Punjabi. So, bit of a culture being removed from our.
Is that a crisis though? How dare you?
I know, right? Yeah. No, I would say a crisis.
Okay.
Here's the thing. We're going all over the place. Cheers.
Cancel.
I feel comfortable talking about this because I actually love Indian culture. A lot of my good close friends are from either India or near India, and obviously that's because I went to a French high school in Brampton where it was black and brown, and not to say that white was a crazy minority, but white was probably 25% of the school.
Wow.
Okay. So I absolutely love the Indian culture. The problem is that I love the Canadian culture way more. Mm-hmm. This is the thing. As everyone should love their own culture more than other cultures, right? And before it's all talk, I try not to believe things that I only see on TV or social media that I haven't actually experienced in real life. So I would have never talked about this like any sooner than like a month or 2 months ago, because I'm now seeing it firsthand. Obviously, there goes the camera. So I'll take a quick break.
Boom.
And get back into it. So, yeah.
Cut.
As a citizen of the country you're from, you should feel implored to protect the culture. This is the stuff you love. And this is the thing that they accuse people of being hateful for. Why are you so hateful? Hateful
You're
against nationalist. I think, is that a bad thing? Is that a slur?
It's being made to be, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it'll be like, oh, you're a white Christian nationalist or something. It's like stuff just put together.
Yeah.
Whatever sounds bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So obviously not. And I'm not against immigration either.
Right.
I just think that it's important to have immigration with assimilation. Mm-hmm. And this was a quote. What is it in Spanish? I want to say the Spanish version. But in English, it's when in Rome, do as the Romans.
Right.
And my dad taught me this quote because, of course, he's Mexican. It's donde fueres, haz lo que vieres. Basically, where you are, do as the people are doing, or do as you see what's going on around you when you're abroad. And I think assimilation's important. If I was to move to Croatia, which after going to your church, I'd now want to do because the people in there were amazing, I would, before leaving, I'd have to learn. I'd feel it would be my responsibility to learn about the Croatian culture.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm a guest in their house. You don't just show up at someone's house and wander around and pretend like it's yours.
Right. That's what I did when I came.
Right. Fair. But full circle, I'll get your thoughts on it, but full circle, I actually don't think it's the immigrant's fault. I think that's one angle to say, as an immigrant, you have a responsibility to assimilate. But of course, millions and millions of people are coming here, and they aren't all going to get accustomed to this way of life, and they're not all going to go through the due diligence of learning Canadian culture. Of course not. That's why you're supposed to have elected leaders who represent you well and are controlling this situation from not happening in the first place.
Yeah.
So it's obviously, I would say it's the government's fault first.
So assimilation being important, then how do you feel about the indigenous back in the day in the residential schools?
Exactly.
Because we tried to assimilate them.
Well, that's the thing, is that I don't understand how that could be assimilation, because that's assimilation from us going into their house and saying you have to act how we want you to act.
Right.
That also doesn't really make too much sense. So in that context, that's an interesting topic to talk about, because I don't know enough about that.
Yeah. And
the whole thing happened with U of T's lot being encamped from the Palestine guys. And the pro-Israel people, or the U of T, was basically saying private property, and then the Palestine people replied with, there's no private property on stolen land. So I don't know exactly what to make of settlers, of European settlers who came and took Canada from the indigenous.
But now, do these people just, could they just break into our homes and say it's theirs now? I mean, that kind of does happen across North America, but could they just do that and say, well, private property, you don't have that because you stole it?
I don't think that's fair.
I don't either. I think that's ridiculous, and you should be able to shoot that if someone's breaking into your home. But by that logic, if they're just encamped on a university and the university can't do anything about it because they're weak, then really, that's a sign of when you're having to put a piece of paper up that says please go away by the end of the week, and they don't, and you do that 4 times before potentially doing something, that is very weak.
You think it's cowardly?
Yeah, imagine someone broke into your house or just stayed on your front lawn. You'd probably be like, what are they doing? Yeah. Why are they there? Yeah. And I'm going, especially if they're coming inside, that's not going to go well for them. Yeah. But they're just well, our hands are tied because you can't look too bad because now your funding goes away. Right. And without that, now you're nothing. Yeah. A lot of the money from these universities come from funding, not tuitions, which is insane because of how much tuition is.
That's a good point.
And so what happens when that funding goes away? Well, they kind of cease to exist.
Yeah.
So you have to play by these rules from whatever donors and corporations, or else you aren't U of T anymore. Like the prestige, you're U of T, but you're not like the U of T where people come to. So like, there's not much money there now. And, you know, your diploma is not going to look as good because, or your degree is not going to look as good because now it's like dishonored.
Do you think that, are you saying that the donors don't think as you do? Wouldn't the donors want a strong school as well?
Yeah, but by their rules.
By their rules.
Right? So if people are like anti-LGBTQ, it's a bad look because people say like, well, this is what is resembled or represented at U of T. So we can't have that. Let's usher that away really quick. But when it's something else that favors others or some other group, like, oh, okay, we'll let that one slide.
Yeah.
Just whatever the flavor of the day is.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I want to ask you, there was something that we had before we got into the beautiful gifts you had. It's like Santa Claus was here. About this idea that I am starting to very firmly believe in, which is you're talking about we don't necessarily need to be promoting and parading LGBT, XYZ, whatever. Yeah. And I have gotten to the point where I think that the promotion, that's the key word, is promotion and propagation of sin is worse than sin itself. I think me going and saying, everybody keep watching porn. Pornography is great. It's good for your mental health. We need to destigmatize it. Everyone, let's make porn socially accepted. I think that is way worse than me going upstairs and watching porn, which I don't do because I think that's horrible.
Isn't it gay?
It's
like,
gay.
Yeah. Like if you're a straight man watching porn, I think you're actually just gay.
I heard a thing that said you're watching the girl you desire get railed by another man.
What about softcore?
So I don't know. Listen, I don't know the terms. I'm not up to date. But back to the thing. I think that it's one thing to sin. Obviously, everyone sins.
Yeah.
It's a different thing to go and try to destroy the world by making sin destigmatized.
Right.
What do you think?
Yeah, by really going out there, like same with Christianity, like the guy that stands at like Young and Dundas corner and just like shouts out Bible verses when no one right there is really interested in what he has to say is also kind of a nuisance. Like that's not doing any good. Jesus didn't go around with a megaphone just shouting the good gospel. Yep. It was, he really didn't speak about it much at all other than like through parable, through proverb. And that's when people could really understand things. But when you're just shouting out verses trying to promote that too, even though it may be objectively good, it's still not doing anything.
Yeah.
And same with when, you've got like a parade and you've got like a guy that has assless chaps and you have adults that bring their own children to watch that.
Crazy.
Like, I just don't... what are you promoting? Acceptance? Like, is that what we're going for, is just like everything's okay? That's so bizarre because now you stand for nothing. Yeah, so if you want to be accepted, then Billy and Bobby can go be accepted for whatever they want. Anyone can do whatever they want. There's no rule. There's no order. And everything is just chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's people's priorities are different. So how do I put this? This is something that I think about because like I don't talk about it with my dad that much. Like I don't even talk about it with my parents necessarily that much. But there are issues that I can see in the world today and that I faced when I was younger as a kid that they wouldn't be able to grasp. Like this is not, once again, it's not like I went to them and said, do you understand this? But it's just I have an understanding. And it's like people have different perspectives of the world. So let's say James Charles being on the YouTube trending #1 page when I was 12. Okay. That is a very small thing that can kind of get into a young boy's head and being like, why is a full grown man wearing makeup the most popular thing? Why is this the route to success? This makes no sense. So I've now grown up to be in a space where I am huge on masculinity and strength and boys don't cry. Whereas back then, I'm sure if you went back 30 years, the message of boys don't cry might have been propagated by some people who were toxic and who didn't actually think about what are the struggles men are facing? So then you have another boy who was raised in the 90s who is saying, yeah, it's okay for you to cry as a young boy, because the messages he was hearing were negative in a different way than boys should cry all the time, which is what I heard, which I don't think is right either.
Right.
So what did I get started on there?
Peak masculinity.
Yeah, I guess. But yeah, so sorry, you were talking about, yeah, that's what it was. Acceptance and tolerance. Maybe the people who are pushing this movement grew up in a time where there was absolutely zero acceptance and tolerance. If you were gay, they were gonna get you to the park and beat you up.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
So they're now grown up. They're a mom. I'm talking about this because I'm talking about a guest I had on VoV who did exactly what you said, who brought her kids to the parade where guys were walking around with assless chaps. How do you get to that point? Maybe because when she was a kid, the people who were gay got the shit kicked out of them, and she's like, this is wrong. I'm going to be a part of this movement. Right. Unfortunately, now the movement that you're supporting that was good back then to protect gay guys from getting beat up is now pushing degeneracy at mass.
Right. So when does it go too far?
Yeah. And how can you tell when it goes too far? Even because now we're trying to pull it back a bit, be like, maybe naked guys shouldn't be on the street in front of 8-year-olds. But as you mentioned before about the pendulum, it's going to eventually swing too far where maybe I'm going to be 40 or 50 and I'm going to be on the wrong side of the argument. Because then maybe gay guys, again, are going to start getting beat up. And I'm going to be like, no, because when I grew up, they were walking around naked.
Right.
So
it depends where we want to try and make the rules from. Like if it's just us as a single person, it's very hard to do. But if you just like use the Bible, for example, it talks about homosexuality being a sin. And so you can agree or disagree with it if you like, but that's from some of the oldest texts that we have. That's what they thought. And so you got to think they probably had a reason for that. It wasn't just based on their feelings. And so why could we logically conclude that that might be the best option of it being unacceptable? Well, if like what's happening now, you've got a generation where it used to be someone in like the 70s, 1% of people identified as one of these letters. Okay. And then the next generation, it was 2, and then it was 4, and then it was 8, and then about 16. And so if we double every generation and we have more than half of people who end up as one of these letters, well, we're going to see a very steep decline in population eventually. Yeah. Obviously, because they're not having children. And then some people would actually say that that's good and better for a more sustainable planet, which like, okay, now you lack creation and innovation because there's far less people. Yeah. And then you don't even have enough people to complete the tasks that you want. Like you want to go somewhere, but there's no bus drivers, or you want to repair your kitchen sink, it has a leak, but there's no plumbers, no electricians. There's just less people in general, and especially men who usually choose those jobs. That's just a stat. It's not my feelings, right? So if you're trying to create less men or weaker men, like what is the consequence of that? There's something. And so if you just want to make things more accepting, you have to be able to realize what is the alternative to that. And then what are the many alternatives of those choices that you make? So do you want to have men that are more accepting, so their whole family is more accepting, they're not going into as masculine jobs, some are more becoming gay or identifying as something, you have a lower population, and then you just have men that like cry all the time, are never completing physical tasks or physical jobs, and then you don't have enough of what you also need, and then what? Now you're like, all right, allow more straight now, open the floodgates. Like where do you again draw the line? What's too far? So if 65% of people identify as whatever and they also don't want to have children, and you have like a 30% decline in your population, which is also probably like the white people of the country.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Because if you have other generations coming here from other countries where homosexuality is illegal, they're going to be repopulating your country, and now you don't really have a well, you don't have Canada as you know it.
Yeah.
And then some people would say, well, that's good. We shouldn't have these places as we know them. We need the patriarchy to fall. But then for that to happen, you'd have to be okay with not having really anything that you have now, because all of that was spurned from order, from masculine, from patriarchy.
Yeah.
So like,
Absolutely.
yeah, that iPhone that you're tweeting out all of your social justice shit with, like, well, you have to throw that in the garbage because, you know, we created that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Literally.
So get rid of that.
It's true. And I think the missing piece with that, because I think that you're right when you say that, well, you didn't exactly say this, I'll rephrase. I think that the number one most harmful and demonic agenda that's out there is to decrease population.
Yeah.
There's so, like, everything you can think of. LGBT, obviously, if you're gay, you're not gonna have kids. Climate, world's going to shit anyways, don't have kids, fine. TikTok trends, have you seen dinks? Do you know what those are?
No.
It's dinks, DINKS, double income, no kids is what it stands for.
Oh yeah.
So they go, it's this trend, we're dinks, blah blah blah. It's ridiculous.
Are they also dykes?
No.
Okay.
They're straight couples.
Okay.
Straight couples.
Double income, no kid, and they're proud of that.
Yeah.
So when they're like 80, who's gonna like take care of them?
Good question.
What, like my family?
Yeah, maybe, right?
Like who are you gonna hire then? Like what's gonna happen if you need assistance?
People don't think that far, I don't think.
And then like what's your purpose? Like what, so you have created your own purpose in your mind that like kids don't matter and whatever I want matters.
Yep.
That's crazy selfish.
Yep.
That's bizarre. And then trying to think of another quote that I saw, but I have to probably pull it up on my phone. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
All right. Are these things down though? Are these services down?
Maybe.
From Microsoft being down?
Could be, yeah. Trying to get this episode not to air.
Let's go to the old quote. How many notes? Do you have an iPhone?
I do.
How many notes do you have in your phone?
Good question. I'm going to say 70.
Wow.
How many do you have?
It's got to be over 800.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
75 I have.
75. All right. What were we just talking about? What was the quote I was looking for?
If you not have kids, selfishness, thinking only about yourself.
There's a lot of quotes in here. I don't like my odds on finding this.
You can search for it if you know it.
The number of notes on the phone, which is more easily found.
Oh, right. Microsoft. Sorry.
894.
894.
Yeah.
Awesome. So while you look for it, I was going to say, I'll just talk to the camera. I had 2 pages of notes, which is uncommon for VoV because I don't want to say try not to take this too seriously, but normally we just go and we flow, and I have other responsibilities I need to take care of in terms of, work and family and seeing the girlfriend and all this type of thing. I'm not trying to make this into the number 1 podcast in the world.
Yeah.
But today I'm like, this is going to be potentially, most likely, the longest episode we've ever had, and I want to get really deep into a lot of things. So I prepared notes, 2 pages of notes, and Microsoft goes down today. They're like, VoV Jacob Saunders. Oh, no, we cannot have this happening to the whatever 1,200 Instagram followers that VoV has. Going to destroy the world, unfortunately. Destroy it by encouraging people to have kids and love each other.
If you can infiltrate a university, then you can infiltrate the world.
Yes, that's a good point.
I found this. It's not even really a quote, but just a note in here. Without rules, we would become slaves to our own passions.
Yeah.
So we need some rules and some order. Left to our own judgment, we would be a slave to our own passions. We would aim down and worship qualities beneath us.
And this is why, like, I have a few different reasons for believing in God, and I want to lean towards Christianity. Obviously, because that's the culture I've been brought up in, as a Christian culture. Canada used to be a Christian country, and so that's obviously my first route. And just on a broader sense, I think that religion in general, God in general, is better than no God. So if someone's Muslim or Jewish or one of these other key religions, I don't think that's bad. I think it's better for society to have more of those people than less of those people. So once again, if you have a different opinion, I'd love to hear it. But I was going to say about different reasons I believe in the Bible. One of them you just brought up is that the commandments or the instructions that the Bible lays out go against like natural human desire.
Yeah. And
so many
commandments, to be clear, commandments, not ideas, not like light instructions. Those were the highest rules of the land. Mm-hmm. And we still hold most of those to be true now.
Right. So I want to ask you about, let's talk about this one. We'll talk more about religion overall, but do you think that Christianity is the only path to prosperity? Like, I'm talking for the world. Maybe you can say personally for you what your thoughts are, but for the world stage, do you think that it's good that, we coexist? There are some Christian people, there are some Muslim people, there are some of this, some of that. It's just good that people believe in God instead of worshiping materialism or the devil.
Yeah. Well, if you're just left to your own devices, you're not going to be able to find a good purpose, anything worth living for. That's for sure. And most people, so if people are religious and they practice whatever denomination, really everyone wants the same thing in life. Like everyone wants to prosper and be happy and have a purpose. So to me, it never really matters. Like if someone says they're religious, I don't think that they are, I don't put them on any kind of pedestal immediately.
Yeah.
Because like there were Catholic priests who said that they were religious and then they just like fondled the boys.
Yeah.
Like, so I don't care what you say, but show me how you live. Same with people who, I have friends that are or identify as atheist, but like maybe they just haven't even thought about it. Mm-hmm. So if I ever bring it up with them, it's just like a lot of the thoughts are undiscovered from them. Like I haven't thought about it, or just like whatever, I don't care, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, it's hard to think, and then it's even more difficult to come up with a solution or a purpose by yourself. So, what was the original question?
About, is it good that we have people around the world believing in God, or do you think that the only best way is through Christianity, through Jesus?
Well, no, I don't think so. I might think it's the best because that's what I follow, but I would never think differently of someone who's worshiping a different God.
Yeah.
But people that just worship things, like what a waste. Because you will not be happy with more things or better things. Yeah. Anyone, and even like wealthy people will tell you that. Like they don't think about the jet that they own or the helicopter they own or the fancy cars that they own. They don't care about it. It's a means of convenience. Mm-hmm. Most of the ones that I've spoke to personally. Yeah. And then it seems like wealth in itself just brings out more of who you already were. So if you were a prick and you get more money, you're probably just a bigger prick to people. And if you were very gracious and kind, generous, loving to all people, and you end up with money, that will probably show as well in donations, let's say. And then some people would say, well, you only donate to catch a tax break. And then you're like, so you'd rather them not donate?
Right.
Like Bezos got flack for that after he donated like millions of dollars to wildfires.
Yeah, in Australia, right?
Yeah, and people were like, oh, that amount only resembles like me giving 12 cents. Yeah. You're like, well, you also didn't even give 12 cents. Yeah. So there's that.
Exactly.
And we don't really care about the two that you have to rub together in this opinion that you're giving because you're just a prick.
Yeah.
And what's good enough? Like 10% of his wealth?
Right.
Or like half? And again, you haven't done anything yourself. So
exactly.
We can't even care what you have to say because you've done nothing.
And it also, I talked to this with my grandpa. I feel like he like kind of disagreed with me, but maybe I didn't word it the best. Jeff Bezos started Amazon and did work so he could amass the wealth to donate whatever, how many million that only was this amount of percent.
Right.
You haven't done shit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like you're on YouTube an hour and a half at night and you're like, oh my gosh, my job is so hard.
Literally.
I make a minimum wage. You're like, do something about it.
Yeah.
Like really, especially in the country we live in, you can do anything.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy when people just aim low. And then what's the reason that they would aim low? Like just a lack of self-worth or something, like the responsibility that comes with it. And I could see that actually when we were talking about having children, a lot of people think like, oh, I don't want the responsibility of having a child. And then so like you're almost going to stay a child for the rest of your life then.
Yeah.
By not taking on the ultimate responsibility that will help you grow up. And if you think the world is so bad, wouldn't you want to have children and add to the numbers of the good?
Yeah.
If you have a good solution, you know what you believe is a strong way to live, wouldn't you want to amass more of that instead of hold that back?
Yeah.
So by having no kids because you think the world is worse, well, it's definitely guaranteed to get worse if you don't help the situation.
Right.
So you're just going to live out your life and die, and that's it for you and your ancestry.
Yeah.
Like, that's nothing.
It's depressing.
Yeah. Now you're gone. And those last few years when you may have needed someone to help you, there's no one there. And especially if you didn't want any responsibility and you wanted to do whatever you wanted, you likely, not guaranteed, have a few less friends than the average person. Because, you know, even through children, you end up with more friendships from different parents, sports, music, whatever their hobbies are. You amass more people in your circle. Yeah. So if you don't have children, you're introduced likely to less people, less meaningful relationships. And in those last 5 to 10 years, you have no one to take care of you. And who's going to come to your bedside when you're dying? Your kids aren't there because you never had any. And your parents are likely dead, like on average, right?
Yeah.
And your friends, few and far between. Like, have you lived a good enough life that they would even want to show up? And now you're alone and you just have like Nurse Ratched at your bedside, just holding your hand, like, see you later. And you're like, wow, that was it. That was my one go at this. And I just thought having kids would be a nuisance on my life. And I didn't want to do something hard, put myself aside for a little while and create something better. And now I lived alone and died alone. Like, that is crazy.
That's so sad.
Because that is the strong alternative to the I don't need to have kids. That's the path that's likely.
Yeah. And I can sense the good intention from this point, because I say the same thing. The people, for the most part, who are talking about not having kids today and how kids is such a bad thing and, you know, just like live it up. You only live once. They have a lot of opinions that I would say oppose ours overall.
Yeah.
So if we were truly being selfish and we were like, we want the world to be more the way we think it should be, we would say, yeah, don't have kids. We don't want your kids thinking the same things you do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, not let's give Jacob, you have kids, I'll have kids. We'll make the world a better place that way. But you're not saying that. We're trying to open some perspective, because even if they do disagree, I think for that human being, that one chance at life you were talking about, it would just be so heartbreaking to see that happen to a friend or a family member. It's like, I don't want that. I just love humanity. Okay. How many people?
I don't anymore. Actually, I'm going to change my answer. Those type of people that think you shouldn't have kids or just support whatever's out there and put a Ukrainian flag on your front lawn and stuff, do not have children, please.
There you go. But yeah, you're talking about, this is a while you're talking about this. Sorry. Oh, this is what I wanted to talk about. The unfortunate reality of this is that even if you and I have our kids, start our own families, that's not going to change the aggregate effects that all these other massive ideas will have. Like we can, you know, put in our ballot for not depopulating the entire planet, but it's going to take a lot more to try to save the world. Because like when you think of, let's say in normal times, I would say these are currently not normal times in terms of, let's say, the political atmosphere, but let's say in normal times you had a liberal, the liberal leader and the conservative leader. Let's say neither of them were heavily favored. They were both politicians. They were both doing their thing, whatever. Let's say one puts in a policy that is going to negatively impact a large number of people, which I don't know if you know politicians, that tends to happen from time to time. But even though as an individual, I think every individual has the capability to avoid whatever that negative thing is. You know what I mean? If you set up your life in a certain way, as you're saying about you're self-employed, you don't need to worry about saying something and getting fired from your job. There are different things you can kind of do to set yourself up so that no matter who's in the prime minister's seat, you're okay. You're doing good. But overall, for the country, you're going to see if you put in a policy that affects every single 38 million Canadians, there's going to be a shift. You're going to see something happen where there are less people having kids. There are more higher population of, well, I guess that once again, all this comes back to having less kids, whether it's, like I said, LGBT, climate, all this type of thing. Abortion is another one, less kids. That's a touchy subject too. I don't really know what to think about that.
We'll go into that after. Write that down for next. Put it in the queue.
Yeah. So that's just, I was just saying that's just a sad thing about the only way to fight back against this is to also have your own sort of cultural impact. Mm-hmm. So even with the small effect any of these conversations have, this podcast, I will try to subtly promote the things that I think are good for the world, like having kids, even if it's something small as posting a clip about what, like, leave your favorite girl name or boy name in the comments. Just think about it. Have it on your mind. Let's just presuppose that you're going to have kids, because a lot of people I think are saying I'm okay, especially young people, which sucks.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, even on the tax front, like where our economy has gone, it's harder economically to have children.
Another thing.
But then there is a side that will like not make a lot of money and have children so that they get these baby bonuses and live like just at the bottom of the barrel so that having children actually nets them more money. Yeah. So if you have 4 to 6, you're almost better off than if you didn't. And there are some people that take advantage of that because they don't even care about the responsibility. So that's a whole other side down in the dumps. But if you want to live a decent life and like do some things with your family, it's very hard to afford children right now, because if you're getting any kind of home like worth living in comfortably these days, let's say within like an hour of us, you're probably guaranteed to pay at least $600,000.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that might get you like a townhouse that's an hour and a half or so north of the city. And that's just the price of things now. So you're going to need, if you made $100,000 a year, which already not many people do, you would probably need something along the lines of a 40% down payment to even get a mortgage for that house.
40?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I only know this because I went through it 2 years ago. Okay. So to get that kind of house, I needed 40% down to even be approved for a mortgage.
That's insane.
By making over $100,000 a year. So I needed $240,000 as just like a welcome to the club part.
Yeah.
And so I was able to do it through a little bit of indirect help first. Not really financially. I wasn't given any money by anyone, but just an opportunity that was helpful. And no, I did not have to provide any oral sex. But $240,000, even if you're making $80,000 a year, if you spent $0, which is impossible, if you lived at home, had no bills, no phone bills, no gas money,
taxes,
and your parents paid for everything somehow, you would be able to save up. Like if you took home 80, it would take 3 years. But of course, if you make $80,000 a year, you don't take home 80. You probably pay out at least 30% or so of that 80. So now you're down to like maybe 60-ish or 56. And now that's going to take at least 4 and a bit years to save up. but you probably have like a phone bill and you probably want to go out with your friends, maybe go on a week's vacation here and there. And so you're looking at like, if you do nothing and make $80,000 a year, you're going to be like 6 years at least saving up. So you get done maybe university, let's say at 22, maybe. If you're lucky, you go like boom, 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 22 years old. You save up 6 years, maybe you can have a house at 28 if you get a job at 80 grand and save almost everything. So already it's almost impossible in your best case scenario is 28.
Yeah.
And so when the conversation even is like, do you want to have kids? It's like, I can't even have a home.
Yeah.
So like if I live at home, I don't want to have children in my parents' home, even if they would like it, because they're like, my grandbabies are right here and I can help and it would be so snuggly. Like, that's cute, but it's probably not what you want as a parent.
Right.
So then you've got to be on your own. And if you rent, you're like, well, now if I have children, I can save less and I'll probably never own a home. So now I'm in the perpetual rental market for my whole life. Yep. And most people don't desire to rent for their whole lives. Not that it's bad, because you could even make, depending on what money you have, you could make more money investing the amount that you have and renting. You'd make more than just buying a home, whatever. So now you're looking at like, I can't.
My mom's probably screaming at the TV right now with what you just said, but that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, why?
Just because she's told me that like you wanna own, and my views on it are mixed. I think owning's good. I think that you have to look at your situation though.
Yeah. I mean, if you have like a shitty financial advisor, it's probably a good forced savings is a home, because then you just have to pay that mortgage. And if you don't have a strong willpower to save, it's like you have to pay the mortgage and the money's going there anyways. Yeah. So forced savings, yay, if you're irresponsible, I guess. But if you've saved up, say that $240,000 and you have the chance of putting it into a down payment and then paying probably $3,000 a month for a mortgage, more than $3,000 a month for a mortgage these days at like 7%. You're probably at like 4, or you can rent maybe for like $2,500 to $3,000 a month. Well, now your money's either going into this mortgage plus you have to come up with $4,000 a month, which is like kind of insane, or you can take your $240,000, invest that, and now you're renting for $2,500. So you're keeping sort of $1,500 extra a month that you can do something with and invest that. Yeah. Right. Because instead of $4,000 for a mortgage, you have $2,500 rental, $1,500 a month extra, $18,000 a year building on your investment. And realistically, you should be able to make 10% on savings per year, like almost autonomically. You could just invest in like S&P 500, and if you go back and look, that sucker averages like 10% a year for the last infinity. Yeah. And that's mindless, easy, whatever, just the top 500 earning companies, and they're all in there. And if one business fails, you don't have to worry about their stock because they're kicked out of the 500 and someone else comes in. Great. So if you're making 10% on 240,000, that's 24 grand a year that you now have, plus your 1,500 extra, which is 18,000 a year. So now you've made 24,000 on investment. You've saved an extra 18, and now you have 42 extra thousand that year that you can. Well, that would cover your 2,500 a month rent, because that's 30,000 a year. So now you've covered your rent for free, and you still have $12,000 more that you could roll forward and invest. Yeah. So now your 240 becomes 252, and then it makes probably 10%, and now it's another $25,000, etc. Yeah. So, yeah, home ownership is not an obvious good idea unless you just want to live comfortably, have a place with your family, and easily save money without thinking of investing. That's fair. But then you're just subjugated to whatever the interest rate is, and if you're on a variable mortgage because you probably only qualify for that for your first time, and the interest rate goes to 11%, and then you're at like $5,200 a month for your payment, and then you can't afford it, then you're screwed anyways, and you have to sell your house. So what game do you want to play? I guess it's stress tolerance is important in that too. Yes. Yeah. Just kind of how much you want to think about this kind of thing, or just leave it in the back of your mind. I don't want to think. But then not thinking about it might get you to like own a home. because then you have forced savings. I don't have to think about it, but now I have to think of, I own something and I have to make these payments, and I've got hydro and gas payment and like property tax, which is probably close to 1% of your home's value. So there's like about $6,000 a year, which is another $500 a month.
Yeah.
On these other things that we've already covered. So yeah, the costs add up quickly, and the benefit is just like, I own something.
Yeah.
But you own it on stolen land.
Literally. Yeah. Let's talk about, I want to go back to this LGBT problem.
Yeah.
Because once again, haven't gotten to that part, but if I'm not mistaken, homosexual activity is the sin, not homosexual feelings. Is there something to say about that?
Yeah, I believe so. We'd have to sort of fact check this a bit, but it's sinful to even lust after another woman. So you don't have to cheat on your wife, even if you're married and you're lusting after a woman or watching pornography.
Got it.
It's still a sin.
Got it.
Because it's what your intentions are, what your thoughts are. So you could be married and still like think about butt sex every day. And it's probably a sin, because now you're not even in that marriage. You're just, hey, I want this.
Yeah, absolutely. So my question, I want you to give me an answer on this, because I don't know. I just can't get it through my head. My problem with believing homosexuality or homosexual, let's just say gay sex is a sin, would have to then imply that sex for pleasure is a sin. What's the difference? What's the difference between a guy having sex with another guy and a man having sex with a woman for any other intention but creating life?
Why is sex for pleasure a sin?
Why is sex for pleasure a sin? Good question. Is it? That's what I'm asking.
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
I believe that God said that he created us to enjoy the earth and also each other.
Okay.
And so if he said only that, you could infer like, hey, homosexuality is fine. God said he created everything so we could enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And my everything includes wanting butt sex.
Right.
But also in a separate part, it says, homosexuality is not desirable. And again, there are many reasons we could think of why they would come up with that, like not existing. If half of people were gay, you would end up with no one on the earth and no one to enjoy the earth.
Right.
So you don't want to depopulate, because now you have nothing.
Right.
And now there's no feeling. So
so
things should be pleasurable, and things that we also, not just with each other, but also that we own, can be pleasurable. Like having wealth should not be a bad thing, and having wealth is not a sin.
Yep.
Idolizing wealth and money is the sin. So when your sole purpose is just money, you don't care if you backstab a couple people, as long as I have and I have more, good. And that's like the people that idolize the gold calf. It's just like this random statue, and they're like, hey, this is the greatest thing ever. And gold and wealth is the best feeling ever. But again, like coming home is just the same feeling, coming home. Like when I had a small apartment, and then when I got my first large detached home, it felt different, or it felt the same. It wasn't different. I was just coming home. Was that like a Freudian slip? I said it felt
maybe
it felt different. No, it really didn't. It was just like, now you're home and you're comfortable in your house and you have what you want there. Like it's no different coming home, and if you have a 10,000 square foot mansion, like you're still just home.
I hear you.
There's no difference.
Just to come back then. So if half people were gay, or if everyone was gay, we'd become extinct.
Yeah.
If everyone only wanted sex for pleasure, we'd also become extinct, though.
Depends, because if you only had sex for pleasure, kids would definitely be created at some point, unless you're like, hey, abortion's fine, which it's not. Right.
So okay, well, even with birth control, condoms, and let's say you did it all, condoms, birth control pills for the woman, you technically, if enough people had that, you'd also get depopulated.
Yeah. Because the goal isn't only for pleasure. The goal is to reproduce.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Pleasure is also okay.
Right. So if you only have pleasure, if the whole world, which is what people, I feel like maybe it's always been this way, but I feel like a lot of people consider sex more for the act of pleasure, not necessarily I want to have kids. Right.
Like just doing something for a short amount of time.
Yeah.
There'll be some good jokes for that. For 2 minutes. Yeah. No, that's a long time. Just to do something because it feels good is like the most...
Is that a sin?
Yeah. That's like the most beta thing in general too.
Right.
Because now you're just doing whatever you want because it feels good.
Right.
Like, what's that?
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
So how is this not... Maybe it is in line. I don't know. I just feel like I don't hear as many people talking about that as a sin compared to homosexuality. Because homosexuality, you can't have kids if you're having sex with a dude. If you're a man having sex with a dude.
Yeah.
But same thing. Even if you're like, I'm not indulging in homosexuality. I'm just enjoying the people on the earth, as you said. Mm-hmm. But there's no chance for a child. Mm-hmm. It feels the same to me. Well,
as
not physically, I'm saying.
So you have experience.
I don't have experience.
Okay, everyone. Yeah. This is Carter's detail of his case.
I'm just saying that, like, I can't, with a sound mind, criticize the gay couple more than I can criticize the straight couple who's having sex with a condom.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You gotta navigate me to this, because for me the only way I can rationalize homosexuality as a sin is if every time a married couple has sex, they go in with the intent of reproduction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that is the goal. I think the highlights would be if you're going off of Christianity, homosexuality is a sin.
Yeah.
So it's not trying to compare of like the workaround. How can I make this one comparable to like just a regular man and woman having sex for pleasure when this one's already a sin? Now, if the goal is only pleasure and not ever to reproduce, again, yeah, that's probably not great. It would be comparable to homosexuality because now you're just doing whatever you want and you just want to feel good and you don't care about any of the potential consequences. Mm-hmm. So like, why would anyone just have mindless premarital sex to feel good when you may have a child from that? Mm-hmm. And then they're like, well, I wear a condom. And you're like, my friend did that and his girlfriend was on birth control and they had a child. Right. So they should have been like extra safe.
Yeah.
They were, and they still had a kid.
Yeah.
And they're very happy that they did. They just didn't want one then, but it brought them to a different life they didn't intend, and they love it.
Mm-hmm. So the opportunity is always open. That's what you're saying.
It's really is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas gay sex is literally impossible. Is that what it has to be?
Gay sex is definitely possible. People do it.
No. Like to have a kid from gay sex.
Oh, well, have you seen this stuff where like if you can get these, like they're trying to do these transplants as well. So like a man.
Yeah.
That's a whole... I don't know if that's succeeded yet, but I think I think that's like their workaround is like, look, men can, and you're like, you needed a very special, expensive surgery, so not really still,
right?
No matter how much you want to fake it,
right?
But yeah, it depends what we're trying to compare. But I don't think anyone, like a lot of people closer to your age now than mine, because I'm 32. A lot of people your age already have had sex and had premarital sex and think it's just like fun and they don't think much of it. And they'll be like, oh yeah, I wore protection, so it was fine. So, you could still get an STI while wearing protection. So that's also not fun, but it reduces the likelihood, just like it reduces the likelihood of having a child. But when that's the consequence of having sex, you may have a child, like to risk it to just have some fun for a very short period of time relative to your whole life. Yeah. And you end up with a kid with that person who you may not even live with ever is just the craziest, most irresponsible thing I could imagine.
Yeah.
Like if I had a child when I was 17 or 18, I'm pretty sure my life would look very different and not in the ways that I enjoy and intend. I would just be with like some random person who I don't love, and my career would have taken a different path, and I would have just had to like settle for the circumstances and try them to make the best of it. Whereas if you just wait until you love someone and you are with them and you're either like married officially, or then you could say even the act of sex in the Bible, I believe, was marriage, because after that, like, you just didn't philander around.
Oh, I see.
It was like when you had sex, you were married. It wasn't like,
got it.
Let me try someone else.
Got it.
So whether you're actually married on paper or married through sex and that is it, I believe that is the ideal, instead of messing up your whole life with someone you don't even care about.
Yeah. Do you think it's important to be a virgin going into marriage? Because it's very hard to find today, I would say.
Yeah. Important in what way?
Important in the sense that, well, I believe that's what it says in the Bible.
Yeah.
But people would argue that there's a difference between, have you had like however many sexual partners that were meaningless and you were drunk and you didn't love the person, versus maybe there's a girl out there who's had, 2 relationships in the past that were serious and they loved each other and they treated each other well, but now going into her marriage, she's no longer virgin. This is what the white dress meant, traditionally. Is she, I don't want to say less worthy of the title of a wife? But yeah, that's the question.
In many cultures, they do say that.
Yeah.
It's like impurity, and they just would not stand for that.
Exactly.
So I believe it is unequivocally the ideal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, another thing, this is what's, as I was talking about masculinity, a lot of now big toxically masculine figures are coming out and talking about how, as a man, this is especially in the Muslim culture, where as a man, it's different having multiple partners versus a woman. Do you think of that lens any differently? Are there any different either spiritual or psychological impacts on women with multiple partners versus men? Or do you think it's the same?
I don't know enough about it to really have a strong, like, matter of fact about it.
Yeah.
I could give just my own feelings and opinions on it, but it would be dependent. Like, are the women just tolerant of that, or do they want that?
I guess it's, good question. Both, if you want to talk about both.
Because so if let's say the man, the man would in those circumstances usually have money, and he would have multiple partners, I believe,
Right.
because he can also take care of them.
Right.
It's not just like I'm gonna have all my hoes in my brothel and just bang them, and you can't have one.
Right.
If it is, good for you. But if it's you're actually providing for them as well, and they are on board for that,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is religiously that is better. Like,
Right.
what would be the argument for that? Like, I have more house cleaners, or what is it? Like, I just have options, or
Good question.
I don't know what the argument for that would be.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Because if it's based in like, well, my culture allows it, and then like I can just have more of what I want, then if it's for that purpose, I think, again, that's stupid.
Sinful,
when
yeah.
it's just whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's just so, yeah.
This is a theme I feel like we've been talking about a lot, is that I feel this is another thing that I've kind of come to, is that we were talking about, I forget who it was, I think I was talking about my family about suicide and the idea of suicide. And it's like, I just could never even possibly think that way. And I think that the reason is because I don't think that we're meant to live for ourselves. I think we're meant to live for others and to take care of others. Because if everyone in the world lived only for themselves, you'd only have one person looking out for you. Whereas if everyone in the world lived for others and looked to take care of their family and their friends and their church and their community, now you have 10, 20, 30 people looking after just you, and looking after Jacob, and looking after Nikki, and everyone's looking after each other. There's more support. So is this like, do you think about that?
As far as suicide,
Would you? Yeah. Well, that's the most extreme, I guess, extent of living for yourself.
Well, I guess first, like, thank God you've never thought about it.
Right.
And that you've lived in such a way around you that you've had support and it hasn't even crossed your mind or been a debate. Like,
Right.
that is fantastic and obviously speaks volumes about the culture around you and the people around you.
Yeah.
So, like, very fortunate and blessed for you to have that already.
Yeah.
I can say personally from my upbringing, I probably thought about suicide just about every day for at least 4 years.
Wow.
Like every day, likely for at least 4 years.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
So that's the battery. This is a cliffhanger.
There we go.
I'll ask you more questions, but we'll swap the batteries and we'll get back into it. Going on. Second hour and a half.
Let's go, baby.
Let's crack open a snowberry.
Snowberry Peace Tea. Post Red Bull. Thank you very much for sponsoring unofficially this podcast.
I'll block the camera while you give the sponsor message.
I am looking for sponsors for this calendar year and next. See, this is equality right here. This is an example of equality. Look, not equal. Sometimes people get more than others.
Slightly. Cheers.
Cheers, brother. New batteries in.
Ready to keep tearing it up.
Snowberry.
It's pretty good.
It tastes like berry. I'm not sure about the snow. A little bit of yellow in there.
Maybe it's meant to go into the fridge.
Mm.
Snow comes out.
Get the ice cubes, baby.
So we were talking about suicide. Good. Way to cycle back into it.
Yeah, we got a good pause there. I let out all my tears.
Yeah. It's probably the saddest thing to possibly think about because I don't know anyone like tight to me, but I know like a friend of a friend of a friend, that kind of thing, like a few degrees away of hearing this thing, and just like the place someone has to be to consider that. I guess I'll ask you, what was going on? Not even to know like the details. I'm just more thinking about like in your own head.
It was really no hope would probably be the best way that I could summarize it. I just felt like for me and any of the goals I had, there's no hope of any of these things ever being accomplished. And so I grew up from 7 to 17 with a single mother. And like for her to keep our house was essentially impossible, but she made it happen. Like worked enough, had some help from her distant family in Europe, enough that she could just keep the house and keep us somewhat fed through other programs as well. And there were some abusive bits that started, like, of course, when you have she had some childhood trauma, like big T trauma happened to her. And then when you end up having like your husband who is supposed to protect you, who ends up cheating on you, and then like everything that you thought of that was secure in your life is now like a lie again, it would be the worst feeling ever. Yeah. So there was some abuse that started between her and my sister, who's 5 years older, shortly after that. So there were many times where like I would call the police because they were just fighting, and I was like 8. Yeah. So I didn't know, like there's nothing I could physically do, and I didn't know what to do in general. So then the police would come, and so my sister had to move out, like was forced to move out. And there were a few years there where she would just like move in with one of my aunts and then like come back, and then my dad and come back, aunt for a while. And then like a boyfriend when she was 15 or 16. She was homeless for a bit. And then when I had expressed, there was a lot of stuff in between of like my father was not present and didn't seem to care. Sidebar, the first time I realized that like people could really be like so messed up or against you or just like ambivalent of things. We said that we were going to get together for like Christmas Eve or Christmas or something, my dad and I. So I was supposed to walk up downtown Mount Forest, and I was bringing eggnog. I was going to surprise him. So I went out, bought eggnog, was going to show up to his apartment and then like have this eggnog, and I was probably 8-ish, maybe 7. And then I just like knocked on the door and he didn't answer. And so I like knocking, thinking he was maybe asleep. And then turns out he ended up not being there, and he was at like a girlfriend's. And he was like, "Oh, sorry, I forgot." And that was like the first like, holy shit. What was that feeling? It was so bizarre of like an emptiness. And then he had kind of come back around in the picture a few years later. And I remember I had expressed to my mom that I was interested in living with him because there was like, yeah, just not good stuff happening in general at home. And that's when more of the abuse landed on me, because imagine, like, I can kind of see it, doesn't make it right from her side. It's like horrible childhood. What I already said about my dad happens to her. She's got 2 kids. One fights with her all the time, leaves, and she's got one hope left to kind of make things right. And even they want to leave. And now it's like, as my mom, I have no one. How did I screw this all up?
Yeah.
And then the abuse, the physical stuff and verbal stuff, whatever, landed on me. And that was the time of like, I just had no idea what to even do at all. It was like, well, I have to stay here because the court ordered that to be the case. So I have nowhere to really go. And every day is horrible. And like the only place I can go is like outside to play or something. Yeah. But like school, I hated, never tried, never got good grades, couldn't focus. It was insane. So that's what was really the suicidal time of life. But I think in like not having hope and not having purpose, that is one of the main things in life, is to make or find a purpose and help your kids have that. Because it's the only thing that would justify life's inevitable suffering.
Yeah.
Like, you will suffer in life in many different times, in many different ways. And if you have a purpose, you will have sort of that North Star to aim towards. Yeah. But other than that, you have nowhere to aim. And it's just, all there is suffering. So yeah, when there's only suffering and there's nothing really good, like that is dark.
Did you have any type of support? Like, who was the closest thing to a shoulder to lean on, if there was any?
I would say the most reliable was probably my next door neighbor. I had a really good friend, Aaron. Yeah. And many days after school, we would just go outside and just like toss a football for probably an hour and a half, or just like until dinner. And then hopefully we could do that also after dinner. And if not, then I just had to like face the suffering alone. But what was always interesting, and I've thought back on, is how like he always just like listened, didn't give a strong opinion towards anything, but just like always heard me when we were talking, and even from like a young age. I just thought that was cool. I've spoke to him about it before. That was neat. And then there was one of only like 2 Christian families I've ever known of in my life that just lived really good lives and cared about each other. Just like really sweet with everyone, loving of everyone. And they lived around the corner, and sometimes they would have me for dinner. And I could do my schoolwork at their house, because a lot of the stuff you had to like type out by this time, and I didn't have a computer at home. Yeah. So I would go to one of these 2 people's houses and be able to do my schoolwork. And then it was like a reprieve, because it was quiet. There's like no yelling or not being hit with anything. So it was like, this is nice. And like, what a sweet family. Yeah. So there was at least then a good example of like real love that I could see, that was like, wow, you can live this way. Like, how do you do that? What do you have to give up to live this way? Because it was awesome.
So I'll ask you, what was what clicked? My guess is that it's going to be nothing, but maybe you'll have a different answer. What clicked for you to get out of that mind space?
So I kind of rushed off to college to just get out of the house, and I went into police foundations, as all confused people do. And like really soon into that, I realized that I did not want to become a police officer, because it's like everyone's gonna hate me all the time. I'm just gonna get people in trouble, and I have to work shift work, and I don't really make a lot of money. Like even 10, 15 years in, you don't really make a lot for what I had in mind with life. So like everything was kind of bad. So I rushed off to school, and I guess the first thing that clicked as far as maybe like a purpose in life was maybe, I'm not sure, I'd probably have to think about this a little bit more, like the thing that clicked. But I remember my friend was going to get into personal training, and I thought it was really cool. Always love health, always love fitness, because it feels good. Like when you're healthy and you're fit, you just feel better in general. And it was also the outlet of things when I was growing up as well. It was just like sports is where I could put my energy and just perform and do well, and not have to think about not good stuff at home. So my friend was doing personal training. We decided to get the certifications together, and then he had started at a gym in Toronto, and he was just saying how much he loved it. And shout out Steven. And so I was like, wow, that sounds awesome. Like his clients love him, he loves the job, he's making good money like right away as long as you work hard. And I was like, well, so I could do something that I've always loved and help people instead of, become a cop and everyone hates you and you don't get to make your own hours, etc. So that was the first thing that really brought a purpose to life of giving. Is that job. And then other than that, like sports in general has always been kind of the thing for me.
What are some of the biggest, I guess, maybe not biggest, maybe proudest achievements when it comes to fitness? Because obviously there are different ways of measuring it, as we were talking about. Who's the best hockey player? Who's the best basketball player? Is it the guy with the most points? So for you, like, is the best race you've ever had the one where you finished first, or ran the longest distance? Or was it more a mental thing where it's like, I didn't think I could overcome this hurdle and I did? I finally became, let's say, maybe your first ever race that you did. Maybe you didn't even win, but maybe you just did it, and you're like, wow, this is a step. I can't believe I got out of this place and I've become someone who is even doing these races in the first place. Are there any that stick out that you're just like, this is a trophy that I'm gonna, not even physical trophy, just like a win that I'm gonna hold on to?
Yeah, there'd probably be a couple. As far as like the races, I've always much enjoyed the training more. Like the process is always way more fun to me. Like it's never really a chore to go and exercise, because I know what it will bring to my life. And I know that anytime I exercise, I feel better. And anytime I can't, like I've had an injury before, and that was like really horrible, even just like on my mindset. That wasn't long ago, and I was already like seemingly slipping into a depression of like, I can't even do what I love. Like, what do I do?
Was there a year, sorry to cut you off, was there a year that you exercised every single day? Or was there
there was a streak of over 400 days in a row, because I had seen that Phelps did it leading up to Beijing. He had worked out at least once every day for 4 years. And I was like, well, if he can do it, like, I know I can. He's not different than me. He's definitely won many more gold medals than I have. Actually, if I count all my races that no one would have ever heard of, I might have more than him as far as Olympic medals. But I just did every day for over 400 days in a row.
That's awesome. Okay, sorry, keep talking.
I guess the first race, though, was cool because it was definitely the hardest thing I had ever done. There's a time when I was thinking about doing bodybuilding and powerlifting, so I was just trying to, still good, trying to like get big and get strong. And that's like, you do a set and then you rest, and it's like physically hard, but mentally it doesn't take a whole lot. Like you just show up to the gym and put in some effort and try, and then you rest. Whereas the endurance stuff was like, some of the workouts when I first started were 2-3 hours at a time. And like that, you go through some highs and lows in those hours. So finishing the first race, and I said like audibly, that was the hardest thing I've ever done. as far as something just physical. That was crazy. And then, yeah, there's been a lot of cool stuff. Like, I remember seeing a couple people who as a group had, biked 500 kilometers in a day. And then, so I just tried to find the longest I'd ever seen anyone bike. And I was like, well, if I do it alone, like it's harder because there's no one to even talk to or like share the work with. So I'll bike over 500 kilometers in a day on my own.
Jeez.
And then, so I just mapped out this route from like home in South Ontario, whatever, and all the way to Brockville. And so it was 512 kilometers in one day. So I just started at like 2:30 a.m. and finished right at midnight.
Unreal.
And that was weird because it was easy. Like endurance stuff in a way is easy when you're well trained enough because you just stay hydrated and fed, and then you just keep going at a slow pace. So it was like, yeah, just average 30 kilometers an hour, and that was that.
That's
so that
insane.
was a fun day.
That's insane. When was that?
I think 2021.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think July of 2021. And then I guess one other one would be winning the national championship in duathlon. So it's like triathlon, but you run first and then bike and run instead of swim, bike, run. And that would have been in 2022. And so like just winning that was cool from a point of thinking of all the work I had put in, the hours of the exercise, all of the discipline, the things I had said no to, like exercising over 400 days in a row, just all of that came to fruition. And I've always wanted to put myself into something and like see how good I could be. And I never had endurance talent. Like I wasn't just good in, cross country in high school. I was absolutely horrible. So to get this good in it just from consistency and effort was crazy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We are going to take a quick break to let that one cool down. This
go.
One's still doing fine, but
All right.
a quick 5 minutes.
Yep.
So back at it. We were talking about fitness before. Something I wanted to bring up was the most recent race you did. You smoked everyone in the biking, in the cycling.
Yeah.
Because you were behind, what were you, 6th after the first run? What was it, run, bike, run?
If it's the most recent run, that one was a triathlon.
Depends
Depends which one we're talking
the one my mom was at.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the most recent?
That's one of, yeah. So that one I was behind like 3 minutes, I think, after the first 10K run.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, the bike was very good.
That's crazy. Because before, once again, prepping for all this on the Word document that's now been corrupted, I saw that like a few years ago, biking was it a weak point for your races?
Yeah.
And now it's like the main thing. Would you consider yourself a better cyclist than a runner at this point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was weird because like I started running first and ran for probably a year and a half before I even started biking.
Yeah.
And so when I got into the races, my running was still horrible compared to most of the people, but my biking was even worse because I just started. And usually in these races, the biking takes up the majority of the time.
Okay.
It's either about even or more of the time. And so I realized if I just want to create a better solution in bringing my time down, the biking is the opportunity forever. Mm-hmm. Really, because there's always more time doing that than the running anyways. So I've really put a lot of time into the biking, try and do that like at least 7 hours a week, and then sometimes a lot more. It's low impact, so you can always add more without too much of a detriment or injury risk.
Yeah.
And I've went really hard on that. Whereas, running kind of looks cooler when you're really good at it.
Yeah.
So I think those people focused on their running, or they're just naturally good runners. And then, I said goodbye to them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I remember another thing. Once again, points from the Word document are just coming back to me as we're talking here. I wanted to ask you a question about like competition or competing. A lot of what we hear today is like it's you versus you, which I do agree with to a degree. But when you win a triathlon or a duathlon and you're on the podium and you're literally number one on the podium, there has to come a bit of the idea in your mind has to be like, I need to beat these guys too. It can't just be me versus me. I know that for me right now, I'm trying to train for my first ever marathon, and I'm not looking to win. I'm just looking to beat my personal target. And so that's in that context of me versus me. In your context, you are getting first place. Does it ever cross your mind where it's not necessarily you versus you, but it's you versus your competition, or is it both?
So hardly ever, actually.
Really?
I really don't care much about the winning because I can't control that. I would like to win, but it's never the talk or the focus. Like if you asked Nikki about it and what I speak about, it's always the training and the effort that I put in and control the controllables.
Yeah.
So if like some world champion happened to show up to a local race here and race, like he would just make me look like a child.
Right.
And so what I've got to do is whatever I can do. And if that gets me the win, great. And so if I got second and got a huge PR versus if I got first by 8 minutes, I would really feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
So when you happen to, I guess, like be the best, you know, win a national championship, it's nice, but the thought wasn't really like I beat everyone. It was look at like all the work that's went into this. That is crazy. Going from no talent in the thing to just working hard, putting effort in, and then winning. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there, make an analogy here, when you're running out there, do you ever sense that you're running away from pain, let's say?
No, I'm running into it.
You're running into it.
Yeah, like I love that.
Okay.
And maybe it's like, you know, in a psychological assessment, they would say it's not helpful in some way, or like, you know, you've taken the pain that's uncontrollable in your life and you've built something where like you give yourself immense pain.
Yeah.
And then like now you're in control of it and you've created that.
Yeah.
Like I don't care because it feels good. There is like right before the race and during, I'll create this like killer mindset of like I want to crush everybody, and it's just for like the competitive mindset of knowing I'm gonna get everything out of myself. So there's never a time when I'm leading by minutes where I'm like, oh, I can kind of pack it in and jog it in. Like I'm just going all out for what I know I should do and what I expect from myself. So I have the competitive mindset in there, and it's as if I want to win, so I get the best out of myself. Whereas if you're in the lead by like 5 minutes and you've had a really good race or something, if you're only thinking about winning, now you're shutting it down early. You're just jogging in. It's like Usain Bolt jogging for the last 25 meters of a 100-meter sprint.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, but what time could you have got? Like, what's possible? And it's annoying when someone breaks a world record and they jog a few meters.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, there's more in the tank. Like, show us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Show yourself. So, yeah, because it'd be like now if someone beats his 9.58 in the 100, gets like 9.53, and then he's going to come back and be like, well, you know, I didn't have the competition required to do that. If there were better competitors, I would have pushed myself more. Like, no, you can't come along and say that now.
Right. So
just go all out and no, that was it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I like to do that for myself still.
Absolutely. That's interesting. Because I feel like for any, like, pain is a blessing in some ways, especially for, I say for everybody, I guess anyone who wants to succeed in different areas of life. Like pain is motivation at the end of the day. You know what I mean? To a certain degree.
It can be.
And something that I forgot to mention at the very start of this, my whole entry into fitness and into working out and into transforming my body from being a skinny boy to seeing myself filled out and being like, this is crazy.
Jacked man that you are.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You heard it here first. Jacob Saunders. Was started from you. You got me the first 3 workouts that I used for my first 100 workouts.
Sweet.
And I just wanted to say thank you very much for that, because the shift in reality you get from not only seeing the physical difference, but also seeing like your reality, which I already believed, but this just further proved it to myself, is that your reality is absolutely in your own control with so many things. And the most miserable people are the ones who don't see that. not only like with your own outcomes, but like your influence on the world even. Like when you realize that everything around you is just made from other people who sin and who might be at assless chap rallies and all this other thing, you know what I mean? It's like you can make your mark, you can make your dent in history. And even if it's something, once again, starting out just as small as changing your physique, transforming your physique, literally, or other things. Like there's just things that I've learned at school, not from school. I make that key distinction because I feel like I've learned a lot at university, not from the university, just being there and observing things. I've kind of taken different ideas in and come to different conclusions, but yeah. When did
and as long as you don't identify as a victim during the pain, right?
Right.
So the pain can make you greater if you want to do something with that, if you can bring yourself to work through that suffering. But a lot of people also don't.
Yeah.
It's just look what's happened to me, and life has thrown me these curveballs, and it's not so good, and so like help me and woo to me.
It's true. When did religion start coming into your life?
It was probably around, it's tricky because there's always been something there.
Yeah.
And like that Christian family that I grew up around the corner from, like they always gave me good points and there's something there. And I'd really think about everything that they told me. Like even one thing so simple, the boy at the time who I was friends with was like, well, if you just believe God's not real and he isn't, like nothing changes, you don't live differently, so who cares? If you don't believe and he is real, you've really missed out at the end.
Right.
So if you do believe and he's not real, you've probably lived a good life. And if you do believe and he is real, everything is amazing. You've lived a good life and you will be saved, or whatever that looks like to that religion in the end.
Yeah.
So it was like, why would you not? Like, what do you have to lose? And then, the answers would be like your own pride and ego, which are somehow people's hardest things to lose and to give up, right? Because now it's like, I don't matter and my own reality isn't the best one.
Right.
And that's the hardest to give up. So there was always something there. And then I guess more practically would be probably 4 or 5 years ago, and I would go to different churches in town, and I'd try, Presbyterian one, Pentecostal one, Catholic, whatever this community one was based on. And I was just going to different ones. And, they all kind of speak the same message, but it's also how it's delivered and who's there. So there was, I think, like 6 out of the 7, for example, were not that welcoming. And I would show up and like no one would really speak to me. I'd get some looks of like hey, you're obviously the new guy kind of thing here. And I'd sit over in this little pew on my own and no one would really talk to me. And that feels weird.
Yeah.
And then just from meeting Nikki, she's Seventh-day Adventist. So eventually enough into our relationship, a couple months, that she realized I was a decent human and not going to run away. She invited me to her church. And so we went to a Seventh-day Adventist one around the corner from hers first. And all the people were just like, hey, who are you? Like just a normal conversation. Like, what are you doing? I was like, yeah, I know her. And they're like, oh, she's so sweet. All this. So they just talked. And then it was like, oh, yeah, it's just like kind of seemingly like friends that you haven't seen in a while. Just like, how are you? And then I went to hers and it was more of the same. I was like, wow, these people just care about anyone they come in contact with. Yeah. So even if they said they weren't religious, these are still the kind of people that I would want to associate with. But they also have these good morals and values and walk the talk. So I like this group.
Yeah.
And that's why I continue to go there, even though it's, pretty far.
Yeah. It was awesome. I'll say I've only been to 2 churches ever. Pentecostal one right by here.
Yeah.
Which was a good experience.
Did they have the Timbits and the coffee? Right at the front door?
Timbits. It was coffee for sure. Yeah. I think there was some sort of pastry too.
I remember that one.
Yeah. But they were super welcoming. I had a nice conversation at the end of the, what do you call it, ceremony?
Sure.
At the end of the ceremony with an older woman, which was very nice. And then for the second time, I went to your church, Seventh-day Adventist Church. And once again, very incredible community. And everyone there just, it looked, you know what church has been for me? It's a safe and protected like section of the world, it feels. You know what I mean? Whereas when I walk out from U of T and bump into the guy in the assless chaps, it's like the whole, like, it's just stress everywhere. It's like everything's falling apart, it feels. And as soon as you walk into church, it's like everything kind of drowns out. It's just calm, happiness, peaceful, hope. It's crazy. It's crazy to see. And health too. Everyone in that church they were like well put together, not only like dressed wise, but also like no one looked like scruffed up or anything, which is important stuff. And yeah, that's another thing. So I have 3 reasons for why I believe I'm diving into religion now and why I want to learn more about it. My first, I guess, introduction. So you gave the example of the boy who said, if he is real, then you'll be saved and you believed. And if he's not real and you still believed, your life is still all right. If he wasn't real and you didn't believe, it's like, it's kind of like neutral at that point. It's like you didn't really, like, whatever. You know what I mean? There's like the scale is way more tilted in favor of believing. But for me, the first one was, I was agnostic. I used to go around saying that. I'm agnostic. I don't think the existence of God can ever be known or unknown, you know, that kind of thing of just like, we'll never know. And then from that was my base. And then from that, I kind of adopted more of a mentality of thinking what's useful is what's useful is better than what's true, which is controversial in a lot of different ways. But in this specific instance, it helped me because believing in God, once again, is just the idea of having someone always looking at what you're doing, and you're not going to get away with anything, with any sort of malice and any sort of wrongdoing. So it even got to the point where it's like, if I'm in residence and I go to take a leak and I get a bit of a splash on the toilet seat, I have to clean it myself because I just know that either God's watching or by luck's chance, the janitor is going to walk in as soon as I step out of the washroom and see this guy pissed on the seat. So I can't now I just can't. There's certain things where I'm like, God's watching. Okay. You're going to get caught if you're doing anything that's bad. So that was the main thing. What's useful is more important than what's true. Combine that with agnosticism, believed in God. Second one was just the timeless wisdom of the Bible. Time and time again, I've heard people be like, yeah, it says this in the Bible. I'm like, holy, like it's 2,000 years ago and it still applies today. It's like, I've never heard anything, I'll say I've never heard anything wrong from the Bible, but you can get wrong interpretations, which we can talk about deeper if you want to. And then the third one was obviously just crowd comparison. Atheists on the street and assless chaps, people who believe in God in the Seventh-day Adventist Church who all are looking very, very beautiful. Who do I want to be? What team do I want to be a part of, really? Chances are better if I'm on this side. So those are my 3 things.
Yeah. The truth one's interesting because there's like the truth and objective truth.
Yeah.
And then you get people that have a problem with that who only care about their subjective truth.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my truth is, XYZ.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but that doesn't really matter. Like, we individually don't matter a whole lot. And the part where you said, like, where someone's also watching you, like God, I think an important distinction to make is that it's also a loving God that's watching you, that wants the best for you. It's not someone who, if you left a little bit of pee on the seats, like, zap and you're gone, or he just doesn't love you anymore, doesn't watch over you. It's a loving God. Right. And that is like a great thing to know, that no matter what, it's not that he would judge you as a person because he made you as himself. He made you perfect in his image. Unless you're autistic. But he would judge the actions.
Right.
So like a parent can can love their child and hate how they're acting at the same time.
Yes.
And same with God. And that is definitely true.
Absolutely. That's another thing that I had on my document that's been lost, was because we're going to make a bunch of comments on society and people's behaviors now. And that's the key point, is that it's people's behaviors. I'll get on here. Sometimes I'm provocative. Oops. And I'll say, like, getting blasted on the weekend is for losers. If you get blasted on the weekend, you're a loser, blah, blah, blah. And rightfully so, people will misinterpret that. When I say rightfully so, because I'm being provocative intentionally, as judgment, as saying, if you party and get drunk out of your face on the weekend, you are a loser as a person. Whereas I'm not directly calling out any specific human being. I'm not saying anybody's name. Right. So clearly what I'm calling loser is the behavior. It's a loser behavior, not a loser person. And this goes into a different thing where I like to call them loser points. I'll very briefly explain it to you. It's I'm sure it's flawed, but I just like to think about it this way. Let's say everyone has 1,000 loser points. Okay, so you have to think of the biggest loser ever. I literally mentioned this on the 2 podcasts ago, but I want to do it real quick. If everyone has 1,000 loser points, you have to think of the biggest loser in the world. What would they be? Like racist, like real racist, not in the way that people try to weaponize the word racist, but like actually racist, actually sexist. Let's say like addicted to porn. Let's say out of shape. Let's say hates dogs and kicks old ladies on the street. Okay, who knows?
I have a friend that actually resembles all those.
Shout out to you.
Shout out, Carl.
So that's like number one loser. Obviously, the opposite of that is someone who's a perfect angel. This kind of person doesn't really exist, but let's just say has all the 1,000 boxes checked out, except for Jacob, of course. And so you can have certain things that dock points from you. So let's say, like, I like giving the porn example because I think that that's not a very controversial thing. Maybe some people think it is. I just think that calling out pornography is good and is going to be a benefit for society. So the example I gave was that let's side by side myself and Cristiano Ronaldo. Of course, I don't know any of Cristiano Ronaldo's morals or ethics or any of that, but let's just say objectively, if I do not watch porn and Ronaldo decides he will watch porn, that doesn't make him a bigger loser than me because he's probably got a lot of other boxes checked off that I don't. Professional athlete, married, children, provides for his family, all this type of thing that I have not yet gotten to do. So anyways, back to the point of behaviors and loser behaviors. There's a big list. You can have your, I guess, your vices. Everyone has vices, but just know that every single one gets you lower on the scale. You go from a 990 to a 989 to a 850, whatever. You know what I mean? So that's just something to think about.
Yeah, I think that person that drinks on the weekend can still probably be an actual loser, right? And but they don't have to be.
Got it.
Right?
What do you mean by that?
It's not even just like their behaviors. Like if you're living that life, you're probably a loser.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like what kind of great ethical, moral person have you ever known or heard of that just like gets hammered often? And other than that, lives like a really great life.
Yeah, I guess it's uncommon, but it wouldn't be impossible.
Maybe not impossible, but like they're probably just a loser. But they could turn it around.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's the thing of you talking about loving God. I have a question. Do you think that does God punish people?
Now or ever in the end times?
Good question. I would say now. In this life, does God dish out punishment?
I don't think so. I've never really, identified with that or believed that. Like some people will say, if God's real, how come he allows like a child to get terminal cancer? Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, now you're just viewing God as like this puppet master that's like, oh yes, I'll decide this and this is fine. And that like a genocide is okay. And it's not God choosing that. That's all of these things are either like sort of, there is a luck component or by chance to not have a child that ends up with terminal cancer at 2. And there's free will.
That's a good conversation to have too.
Right? Like inevitably, I think about it sometimes, like, what if that person or I just decided to like turn our wheel and crash into that other? Like, what a crazy method of trust that every day we drive past hundreds of people and no one has ever been like, F- it.
Yeah.
Like, that's wild every day. And really no one does that.
Yeah.
That's crazy when you think of how many lunatics are out there.
No, it's true.
And then just like, yeah, everyone's kind of in order generally.
Yeah.
And they might yell at you if you cut them off or something and get really pissed off, but whatever. People have short fuses. Good for them.
So you think that has nothing to do with God?
I don't think so. People have choice. Yeah. Like, you know, the topic came up on the earlier this week because of Trump's near assassination.
I want to talk deeper into that too. We haven't really gotten into it, but.
And so Trump said that, you know, I shouldn't be here and that I'm only here by the grace of God.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, that could be true. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I don't think that it necessarily is God that just steps in and keeps that from happening. You know, it's like, yeah, you were definitely lucky in that moment, at least, because you turned your head to look at a graph on a screen.
Yeah.
So whether God made that happen or not, but then again, it's like, now is God the puppet master that he changes fate or history by intervening and like, oh, this one's okay. Because then you'd probably have to say on the other side of it, he allows, you know, the car accident to happen. And he didn't do that for that person. Why would he have let my mom die in a car accident, who I love so much, and save Trump from dying?
Yeah.
I don't think he's at play there.
Interesting. I'll tell you where I'm at. And this is coming from you, who's far more educated on this than I am. Have you done the Bible back front to
No.
back? No, not yet.
It's way too, like, for me, it's way too dense. I can't read something like that in just like a book.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I'm thinking of something for like months.
Yeah.
Like, how does this make sense? How do I not fall into that?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's fair. And another interesting thing they said in the introduction of that Bible is that most people who take in the word of God hear it, they don't read it. Like, most people, they go to church and then the priest reads it out and you hear it from that. They don't actually take the time to go and sit and kind of study. Mm-hmm. But where I'm at with this is that my thought, or the way I perceive God, is more of the puppet master thing. And the question of why would he allow a 2-year-old to get terminal cancer? Once again, you can disagree with this. I believe, let's use my example. Let's say if I got terminal cancer today. You could use the same thing for a 2-year-old, but let's just do this. If I were to die tomorrow of terminal cancer, get diagnosed with terminal cancer, I think it's because God has a plan for there to be much more good that will come out of my death. Perhaps it teaches my mom something about life that she never thought about. Perhaps my brother is so tormented by the pain, he takes that pain, turns it into motivation, and becomes someone who helps the world in an amazing way, right? I just think that when you look back on your life up until this point, right now you're 32, you have a 32-year book. I have a 20-year book. We can see what the story of our lives were, and I believe that the story for us is already written out by God. I think that everyone, same with Trump, even though Trump at age 25 had no clue what life had in store for him, I think God already knew. I think God had a plan for him. And that is more of a puppet master perspective of it.
So then everything is predestined.
This is the question about free will and fate.
So then why try?
I don't know. This is the thing. It's such a impossible discussion. The way I just process it is that my book's already written and I'm going to do things with my free will so that I can be assured that the book is good, that my story is going to be positive, which makes no sense. That would be more of a free will thing. That's not fate.
Those are sounding conflicting.
They are. Trying to work this out. Need your help.
I think Carl Jung said we need to make our unconscious conscious, or else we will just go through life as we please and call it fate.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
So then what is it about sort of our inner beings that make us who we are right now? How easily influenced are some of those things? Why do we make the decisions that we do? Why do we have the thoughts that we do? Are they right? Are they aiming us higher or lower? How would we get that thing on track? How do we aim up? That would really only come from purpose. How do you find the right purpose? Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about identity, because you're talking about I identify as whatever. There are 4 key traits of identity that I think persist mostly today. That's just in Canada, the US, the West culture. In Eastern culture, I'm sure it's a little bit different. But the most popular ones, from what I've just observed, are nationality. I'm Canadian. That's identity. Religion. I'm Christian. I'm Muslim. I'm Jewish. Whatever. Race. There's a group of people who identify a lot with their race. And sexual orientation. A group of people who sexual orientation / gender if you're transgender, but basically who identify as I'm gay. They feel more represented by the rainbow flag than the Canadian flag. So I'll ask you overall what you think about all of those, but what out of those 4 would you say is most important to your identity? And is there a 5th one I'm missing that you think is more important?
It's tricky because my instinct might say the religion is the most important in what I am, but I still don't know of like what I am. Because again, like when you say that, what does that mean? Like if you say you're a Christian, what do people associate that with?
Right.
So if I say that, other people aren't going to understand. Like if I say I'm a man, anyone with a brain would be like, yes, we can see that.
Yeah.
And if I say I am white, people would be like, yep, we probably could have got that. But if I say I'm a Christian, people are like, oh, is that like, what is that?
Right.
It's kind of cultish, or like, what do you do? What do you believe in? I heard some people talking the other day. There's a Sikh gathering in town on the weekend, and there's supposed to be tens of thousands of people going to this thing.
In town, Orangeville?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't want to say where we were at because we might get arrested during this pod if it continues.
Yeah.
Oh no, I have my phone off. So they've got a big gathering, and I overheard some people saying like, oh, it's kind of cultish, and then they're like, oh yeah, I guess it means like God is coming to town, and then you realize that people don't even know like what Sikh is, and like what does a Sikh person look like? Could you say for sure?
No.
I don't think so. You could maybe generally guess, but then like, you know, if they've got like some guru that's gonna come and speak, then you're like, just if that person's religious, like that's a bunch of bullshit. Well, that would be kind of crazy to think, I believe, but people don't even understand what it means. So if I say I'm Christian, again, people don't even know what that is. So I don't bother saying it a whole lot.
Yeah.
Things will be misinterpreted anyways, but most of those things you have to write down on government documents, like your passport. You have to put that you're white and Canadian. You have to put these things, your gender.
Do you have to put race on your passport?
I think so. I think it says on there Caucasian that I am. So like it's kind of out there and obvious and required.
Yeah.
And then religion, not so much. But again, like the other ones are almost more obvious because you can see someone's race, I think, unless we're living in this weird alternate universe that you're not allowed to do that.
Yeah, right. Imagine.
So, I guess like my quick thought would be religion means the most to me, but I wouldn't say it out loud a lot because what does that even mean? And does that mean I am? Does that mean I live that way? Yeah.
Interesting. I'm trying to go through the process of this, of identifying with your sexual orientation, because obviously nobody associates their identity with being straight. It's only the people who are gay who take the most pride in that.
Pride.
Right.
Yeah.
which is another thing you could tie into religion that isn't probably what do they call it? Cardinal sin.
Yeah.
So that's also something to talk about. But I think the reason is obviously because it's a minority group. No, when you feel like you're, once again going back to victimization, when you feel as a victim, and there's more of them than us, we got to band together. Mm-hmm. This is how you get someone who's like the most crucial component to who I am is the person I sleep with, is the gender I sleep with, which as a straight person is like, this is insane. But when you're gay, it's like almost like we have to defend ourselves. We're under attack.
Right. They think they are.
From the world, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's the trans people's fault. This is the thing that I said. I was talking about this with the body positivity and how they're promoting obesity and unhealthiness, and it's it's a shit show. And I was saying how originally body positivity was a good movement. You know, they were just trying to normalize bodies that were healthy, but maybe not like the insane Photoshop skinny mini look that you have on whatever magazine, right?
Right.
So that was the good part. And then after that, eventually got hijacked from the people who are 300 plus pounds who are like, body positivity, love yourself. And they look like Jabba the Hutt. So, but I made the mistake where I think I put the blame on like fat people. Whereas I think instead the people who are causing that whole, I guess, divide between should you love yourself, should you get in shape, is the people who are, once again, who push basically every single social justice idea. And it's just this idea, once again, of acceptance, accept everything, tolerate everything. And so this is my analogy with the trans people who, this might get me canceled. This is kind of a crazy analogy, but let's do it. How would you get a group of well-intentioned, rational people to attack a vulnerable minority? So I would consider trans people a vulnerable minority. Why vulnerable? Because I honestly do believe the issue they have is some sort of mental illness.
Now, to be clear, are we talking about the 0.1% of people who are actually trans,
or the ones, or the
bunch of people who just say that they are?
Right. Let's talk about the people who are actually trans.
Okay.
That makes the argument a little bit more simple.
Yeah.
Because I think that they're struggling with a serious mental issue through no fault of their own.
No doubt.
I can't imagine waking up, walking to the bathroom, looking in the mirror, seeing my beard and mustache and my sack, and thinking, I do not understand what I'm seeing. I feel like a woman. Mm-hmm. That's actually got to be a very scary reality. I can't imagine that, because once again, I don't think that people are trans just to put on a show. Like, I believe them when they go to the surgeon and ask them to chop their penis off. I believe you. I believe you think you're a woman. Okay. So the issue comes with this class of people who's trying to get everything into acceptance, propagating the lie that this trans person is what they say they are. Unfortunately, I believe you feel like a woman, but you're not actually a woman. Sadly, I hate to break it to you. I understand you feel that way, but the reality is that you had to go to the hospital to get your 2 balls cut off. And I don't think it's the trans people that are pushing for this whole thing of acceptance. So what you get is a bunch of people who are trying to sympathize and promote tolerance and acceptance of everything, and consider feelings more important than reality, putting objective truth below how a person feels, which is a sign of a matriarchy, I would say. They talk about patriarchy. When it gets to a point where we're making decisions based on feelings instead of rationality, that's matriarchy, in my opinion. So now you have a bunch of people who are listening to this BS saying that Carter Ponce, who got his balls cut off, is a woman, and being like, that is not true. What is wrong with you? You're a freak. I didn't do anything. I have a problem. I need help. You're now calling me a freak, and you're actually a good person. The good people are the ones now attacking the vulnerable transgender people because they've been fed this lie from whoever's up here at the top trying to coordinate this whole scam and causing beef between these two people who didn't have any beef at all. Normally, you'd have a lot of sympathy from this person. Like, I honestly can't imagine to be going through what you're going through. I hope that you live lead a good life, and I wish for nothing but the best. And let's take the example of people with Down syndrome. Okay, if you wanted to get, would you make fun of a Down syndrome person to their face? You don't joke on this either.
If I was friends with them and they were kind of open to it,
okay,
but I wouldn't just go
some
up
stranger.
To one. Yeah, no.
Okay. So if you wanted to coordinate that, if you wanted to coordinate Jacob Saunders randomly posting on Instagram that Down syndrome people are all dumb idiots,
yeah,
what you'd have to do is you'd have to blast on all media outlets, all over the news, Down syndrome people are just as smart as people who do not have Down syndrome. It's not true. It's obviously not true. I can see it's not true. Mm-hmm. Repeat it, week after week, month after month. As you said, 240 days out of the year, right? Eventually, you're going to get a bunch of people who are well-intentioned, good-hearted, yelling at Down syndrome people for being dumbasses, even though the Down syndrome people are just like, I didn't do anything. I'm just trying to live my life. This person's the one trying to compare me to you. We shouldn't be comparing transgender people to people who don't have gender dysphoria, whatever the problem is. We should be instead having sympathy. Big struggle. But there's someone causing the
give
division.
them an actual resource or some kind of treatment instead of creating social wars, which do nothing and bring us to the kind of world that we live in now. Like, no one really cared or talked about this 15 years ago. And like, we get that people may literally be born as trans, but when you start just saying you are, and then you get people that are like identifying as animals and stuff, you're like, what are you doing?
Wild.
What are we doing? Yeah. There's such bigger issues in the world than that. Mm-hmm. And now we have like a cat person in the classroom. Like, oh my God.
Unreal. Let's get into the Trump thing. What are your thoughts? How much have you taken in? Where were you when you heard the news?
I was on a sloped roof. And someone beat me to it.
In Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I wanted to be famous. No, I just saw it on the weekend, I guess. And it wasn't like that. It wasn't that shocking. But then when you saw the fallout of it and all the details of it, it was like you can kind of see how conspiracies come up. And usually conspiracies are born through secrecy, like JFK assassination. And you're like, all right, so how come those Secret Service agents would already be like looking at this guy with a gun aimed at the president and not take that shot? What are you waiting for? Well, inevitably they're waiting for him to actually take the first shot before they kill him, which is so bizarre because now something has to happen before you take action, which is insane. So you're not proactive. And then you see how, like what we already mentioned, the lady from the Secret Service who can't even holster her weapon. They're just moving like erratically and stressed, and that's not what you want. Whereas when you look at like Ronald Reagan's attempted assassination on the street, they took that guy down very quickly. They got his gun. They were over Reagan. Everything was like done in 5-10 seconds, like no real mess. Reagan lived. Bullet caught, I think, his metal glasses case and some notes in his pocket, whatever side. So he was like very lucky. Wow. But yeah, everything was just like so messy. There's like a ladder that led up to that building that was just somehow left there. And you're like, there's not really ever a ladder randomly leaned up against a building that just also happens to have one like crazy guy go and shoot the president. Kind of weird.
The ladder was with the Trump thing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Leaned up against the building to get him onto the building.
Yeah.
Very weird. Whatever, maybe that's a coincidence. Maybe these other coincidences. they said that he had like these cell phones that they couldn't break into. But like, how do you have this random 20-year-old guy that has like offshore accounts apparently? And I just saw that one today. Has these offshore accounts somehow. Had no when they got into his phones after days, they couldn't find any record in any of his things that say like how to make a bomb. Yet he had bomb material in his car.
Did he?
Yeah, with like a detonator that was found beside his body. So like, how did this guy that seemingly had never searched any of these things create a bomb that he could like dial these buttons and detonate it? And then you could say like, well, maybe he searched it on someone else's computer, whatever. But like all of these things is just weird.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, when you can't beat a guy, then you eliminate him.
Yeah.
And now even like right after that, you see that Joe Biden is likely to step down this weekend.
Yep. COVID.
Yeah.
COVID.
And funny part, so he gets out of the car, you know, just Joe Biden gets out of the car, has COVID, walks onto the plane, salutes the soldiers, goes up into the plane. How come when he has COVID, he doesn't have to wear a mask? But when we all don't have COVID, we have to wear masks.
Yep.
Explain that one to a couple of years ago. If you didn't wear a mask or if you had it under your nose, like you were practically Satan.
Yes.
And now the president of the United States can get out of his car, not wear a mask. People are walking with him, saluting him. He's going into the plane, no mask. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, just a little bit.
What happened to like the most deadly thing ever that we need to be scared of and not work and not go to the gym?
Yeah.
What happened to that?
Good question.
But everyone's fine because they got vaccinated.
Did you get vaccinated? If you want to even say it?
Yeah, I did. And it's probably the deepest regret of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. I did it for going to school.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let you into U of T. They wouldn't let you into university. And I didn't know. That was also, once again, a very much like a wake up period because my mom wasn't very for it. Mm-hmm. And I think that I remember at that time disagreeing with her. I realized I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And it was, that was just kind of the moment in my life where I'm like, apparently the government actually doesn't have the main intention of loving and caring for its people. Mm-hmm. I can't believe it took me 17, 18 years to realize that, but it did.
You know how many people never figure that out?
That's tough. Yeah.
They just think the news is right.
Yeah.
I had a client recently. She said that she was going to stop watching CNN. She's like avid CNN watcher. And I was like, how come? And like, what would you guess the answer is why she would stop watching CNN? Like maybe that there's an alternative where she realizes maybe they're not in the best interest or wrong or something.
Perhaps.
So her reason was that she realized that Donald Trump would never get charged with something and get in trouble, and she couldn't stand seeing all of these charges being dropped for him. She didn't even want to see how innocent he was on the news, so she wasn't going to watch that news anymore.
Unreal.
And it's the only news that she consumed.
Yeah.
So like you hate this guy who you've never met or spoke to so much for some reason.
Yeah.
That you stop watching horrible news anyways because he's innocent.
Crazy.
Just that.
Did you have to? Are you vocal in these times, or you just got to be like, I need to be a professional. I got to zip it on that.
Yeah, with some people, I just kind of zip it because they're so emotional to it, and then like we're supposed to be training and nothing would get done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes
Depends
I just
on
have
the client.
to. Yeah, but if they'll ask me like what I feel, I full on say anything. And if they tell me that I'm wrong, then it's like, okay, prove it.
Yeah.
Like, so if he's so guilty, how has he not been found guilty in any of these things? Like 78 things or whatever they're at now.
Yeah.
I don't know. Look at the stats. They've tried to get him on anything.
Yeah. And this is the part where at this point, I feel like, well, just me personally, I don't trust these institutions at all. That even if he was charged, I'd have to be like, I'm not completely bought in.
Right.
Not completely.
Not at all. Even if he was found guilty, I wouldn't be bought in.
Yeah.
So you're just like, you hear how the judge.
Or sorry, because he was charged, was he not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if he was found guilty. Sorry.
Yeah. And then they're like, oh, well, we don't need to get all of the jurors to agree. If there's 4 here from this thing and 4 here, we can combine them to make the number of whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're just making this up new right now, kangaroo court, like crazy stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, absolutely. Like, it's too obvious. I don't believe in the lone wolf theory of some kid just wanted to go and kill the president.
Yeah, there's it's seemingly no way when all these things lined up.
Yeah, and there's a video where you can see it. It was like about 1:50 of when, like, someone. This is only when the video started recording. I'm sure people saw the guy climbing up the building beforehand, but the video started recording, and they were shouting to the police and the Secret Service, "There's a guy on the roof." Mm-hmm. And even after 110 seconds of trying to get Secret Service attention, all it took was for him to shoot his first shot. And within 2 seconds, they got it off and killed him. Mm-hmm. How do you spot him 2 seconds after he shoots and not in the 102 seconds before the shot went off?
Yeah.
He'd have to get a free shot, right?
I mean, hey, I've played a lot of Call of Duty in my day, and none of that has ever happened.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
It's weird.
Do you think that there's a sniper in the Secret Service who got a word of saying, let him shoot? Or do you think it's just insanely incompetent people?
Maybe not let him shoot, but maybe something like not getting the okay yet. Where they're like, hold off.
Oh, just like no shoot first policy type thing?
Yeah, so they're like waiting and assessing, like, no, we're still assessing the situation. You're not cleared for the shot.
Right.
And then someone else knows about it, whether those counter snipers knew or not. Tough to say. Like, we'll never really know. Yeah. We still don't even know about the JFK assassination.
Right.
And then, crazy enough, in like the most assassinated presidential family, RFK Jr. was never granted Secret Service from Joe Biden until that weekend after Donald Trump advocated for RFK Jr. to get Secret Service. Yeah. And then Biden okayed it. Yeah. And then there's all these talks about the funding for the Secret Service from Biden. Like, Trump didn't even have the sort of star package that he should have had. It was kind of like a lower tier, like, hey, here's enough that like you have Secret Service, but it's not even our best guys. Yeah. And you're like, well, he's clearly the number one target, especially when your side is calling him like Hitler-esque, right, and that he needs to be taken out and put in the bullseye, said Biden in a call with donors. And you're like, so you said that, it's on tape, and then he gets shot a couple days later, and you're innocent?
What do you make of that? Do you think because I'm of the belief that Biden had nothing to do with it. I think it's his camp and the people that fund the everything and deep state, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I don't know if they would tell the 81-year-old dude who's losing his mind that they're going to kill Trump.
I could see them telling him, but he probably wouldn't even understand what's going on.
Right.
He's like, what?
Yeah.
Who? Where is he? Yeah. Give him my melatonin. Yeah. So like he's not the real player. We should know that whoever is the president in general is not really calling the shots. They're not in charge. This should be all pretty obvious by now.
Yeah.
You know, they say all these things before they get in office, and then they get in office and not many of their things on their agenda get ticked off. You're like, what? So who told you that this couldn't happen? Like, why can't we have answers? Why can't we have answers to 9/11, JFK assassination? That's why everyone's like going crazy with these theories, because we're not even allowed to know what happened.
Yeah.
It's all hidden and redacted.
Yeah.
Why are you hiding it? If you have our best interest, just tell us.
Literally.
Like, we can probably handle whatever it is. Yeah. We might not like it.
Yeah. It's crazy. They'll say, I was looking up the meaning. I was looking at like the Wikipedia definition of deep state. What does a deep state mean? And obviously they labeled it a conspiracy theory, but in the same Wikipedia page, they mentioned that 50% of the US of Americans believe in a deep state. Mm-hmm. How is it a conspiracy theory when half the people think it's true?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. When does the conspiracy become the truth?
Right.
Just because it doesn't fit the narrative, it's a conspiracy.
Exactly. Just because the random people we've elected who apparently are smarter than us to run the government and are at home watching, going to Epstein's Island and doing all this shit, are
allegedly,
right? Are decided to not say it's officially true.
Right.
You can believe that. That's the source of authority.
But when they tell us it is, then we can believe it.
Yeah.
We have to wait for them.
Obviously.
They know better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when like your country, like the states, is in something like $35 trillion of debt, or like 36, whatever it's at now. Like, obviously the people that have been in power in general are not that good. In Canada, we're over 2 trillion now. Trudeau has added more national debt than all other prime ministers in the past combined.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn.
All of them combined, and one guy has surpassed that himself.
Crazy.
So, like, obviously, if you're elected, sort of, because we can't even vote for a prime minister here in Canada, by the way.
Right.
We can only vote for our local MP. So we got to hope to God that he is decent enough as a representative for us to get our message to top dog there. But, like, when's the last time you ever spoke to your local MP? Never. Do you even know who it is?
I do.
A lot of people don't.
Yeah.
And you've never seen them, never spoke to them. We can't even vote for the prime minister. And then we're in like $2 trillion of debt. Like, it's not even a real number.
Yeah.
How do you get out of that?
Yeah.
What do you do? Like, yeah, it's endless.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Who's the medical chief in the U.S. or used to be during COVID? Fauci.
Fauci?
Yeah. Anthony Fauci. He admitted to making up all this shit
Yeah,
about
6
masking
feet.
kids in 6 feet.
Yeah.
He made it up. He just made it up. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
there was actually no science to support this. We just thought it was an interesting thing to implement. And of course, he says it now in 2024, where less people are going to care. But back then, it was like, you are a spawn of Satan if you dare not, what's the word? Comply with the mandates, with the mask. This is a mention to Victoria College. I promise you I'm not exaggerating this one bit. In fact, maybe I'm even being too nice with the way I'm going to tell the story. I was 4 steps away from the bathroom in my first year for residence. So this big hallway. There's 2 bathrooms on each end of the hallway. My room, my door opened up, and you could literally, like, straight line, basically, 4 steps to go from my room, inside of my room, into the washroom. And in the washroom, you're allowed to take off your mask. In your room, you're allowed to have no mask, obviously, unless you have guests. If you have a friend in your room, keep it on. And in the hallway, you have to wear a mask. So I kid you not, I went to brush my teeth. This must have been, I think it was a Thursday at like 10 p.m. And a Dawn, who was an absolute quack, I'm not going to mention her name. I don't know on her personal level, just from what
Give her a shout out.
this happened. I'll pass. I actually don't even know if I remember her name. I know what she looked like. Glasses.
Glasses? What was the color of her hair?
Black.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just call her glasses.
Yeah.
Deranged glasses. Anyways, step out my room, 4 steps away from the hallway. I'm not a bitch, so I wasn't going to wear a mask to go 4 steps in the washroom, obviously. But she steps out from the 3rd floor. She walks down the stairs and she's in the hallway. She can see me from a distance. No shit. Comes up to me in the washroom, knocks on the door. Where's your mask? You're kidding me. Are you serious? Yes. Writes me up. You get 3 write-ups until you have to have a call with someone in resident services. I got my 3. I went on a call and I was basically just like, listen, I don't know who the lady on the call was. Okay. Respect her. She was young. She was like maybe a year or 2 older than me. She was just a student serving at the thing. And I was just like, I came back from watching the Maple Leafs play at Scotiabank Arena with 28,000 people wearing no masks. And now I get to residence where there was literally nobody and I'm getting written up. This makes no sense. And obviously she did kind of understand. She wasn't like completely crazy, but she just like had to follow the rules. That's what a lot of people are doing. They people understand it makes no sense, but they just are so scared of challenging authority.
I think it was a Stanford experiment, but we could pull this up. Jamie, pull it up. There was the test subject was in the room with the head of the study. There was someone else in this other room that they could not see. And when the sort of scientist told this person to press this button to zap the person in the other room, because they got a question wrong, they would do it. And eventually they would say, hold it down longer, do it more. And then the other person would be screaming so loud, it was fake, they weren't actually getting zapped, but the person doesn't know that. They're pressing it and holding it down as long as they're told, even though they can hear like excruciating pain, what they think it is, and even to the point of that person then being quiet and they think they may be dead and they're still pressing that button because they're being told to. And that is just studied human nature. We've seen it. We know that that's how we react, or how a lot of us react when we're just told by authority to do something. And then we see how that plays out in real life with real people that can see each other.
That was, I think it was Milgram was his name, the obedience studies.
Yeah.
Literally just having the white coat and different switches to shock the guy.
Yeah.
Literally at the very end, there was one, it was like signs like moderate, somewhat painful, and then at the very end it was like dangerous, and then the last button, literally the very last button, it was pretty funny how they set it up. It just said X, 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 and the guy I think it was like something like 30% went all the way.
Yeah.
Unreal. And they were basically, what the guy was trying to prove is that it was after World War II, and how could the Nazis do something so bad? Are we to believe that Americans are any better? And basically showing that this is human nature.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to listen to orders.
Yeah.
I think that your camera might be out. I will hope that that's not the battery completely dead and that's just the camera, but we might need to wrap up soon. We're at 3 hours and 2 minutes.
There we go.
What's going on?
Wu-Tang.
Longest episode of VoV history by a little bit, just by a tad. Yeah, let's do one last conversation. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that we have not talked about? It feels like there's a lot more we could cover, but anything that you want to wrap up on?
I have a lot of stuff, so we may need to part two it
Yeah.
if you want part two. But there are a lot of crazy things obviously happening in the world. I feel like there is way more good than bad, but the bad always makes a lot of noise.
Right.
So I think we should not be at all living in fear. And like, we said some controversial things today, like some people would deem them, but to me, it's just a conversation, and I would talk to anyone about anything. And I try and do that a little bit on social media, but there's just this weird discord where like when someone doesn't like what you say, they'll just be like, oh, it's your white supremacy showing or something dumb. And then you can't even talk. Like the person can't even have a conversation. Or if they say that, so-and-so is bad, like that Joe Biden is a horrible leader. And you ask like, how's he a horrible leader? And they can't really define something. Well, then like, I don't care what you have to say, because you're just repeating a random narrative.
Yep.
Like you have to be able to speak and explain things. So if you can't tell me why Joe Biden is awesome and fit for office, or why Donald Trump might be better than him as an alternative or worse, like it doesn't even matter what you say.
Yeah.
So I think having different conversations with different people helps your own understanding and helps there be some civil discourse, hopefully. And so I think what you do with your podcast and where you do it in a university where some people might be like a little afraid to say things, I think it's great in what you do.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it a ton. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Jacob Saunders. It's a little bit more tilted on me than it is you.
That's okay. That's okay. You look better.
Jacob Saunders, is there anything that you can plug that we can put in the description? Any links that you want people to visit?
Voices of Vic podcast, Red Bull, hit me up for that sponsorship. Devon Lee Holmes gave me my first sponsorship for this athletic season, so thanks, Devon Lee Holmes. I've really got nothing. Like for my training, I just train people one-on-one. I don't advertise or market anything. I can't take on clients right now. I would say if you're looking for any online training, or if you want to have great discussions, then you can find me on Instagram. It's just my name, Jacob Saunders, and then the number 1. So you could find me on there if you're looking for any kind of online training like that I helped you with a little bit there. I train many triathletes as well. So yeah, if you want to reach out about anything or just talk, I would love to speak with different people.
Absolutely. There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one thing on the account, because I was once again looking through your videos yesterday, that you talked about recently and talked about a lot was sleep.
Yeah.
And I was last night, as I was going through, I'm like, I'm going to stay up late. I'm going to plan for this episode. It's going to be awesome. And then as I was planning, I get to your videos like, listen, sleep always at the same time. I'm like, okay, well, gonna have to go to bed.
Good man.
No, absolutely.
There we go.
It's been an awesome talk. And
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We will see you next Sunday, episode 64, VoV, Jacob Saunders. Once again, peace
Thanks.
out.